All right, man. I made it. I made it. I was like, literally like, click, 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 click to get this one going. I tell you what. Oh, man. Went and visited a friend. That was so nice to see. Got my puppy out for a real nice walk. Burnt my finger like crazy, so sorry if this tune is not as good as it usually is. But here we go. We're streaming away. We're streaming today. I hope you're doing fine. There's so many streams for us to see, but this one here is mine. I hope that you're happy. I hope that you're well. Now come on and join me. Watch the world go to hell as we are streaming away. We're streaming today. Let's stream. Let's stream today. Oh yeah, I'm in a musical mood today, man. I tell you what. It's nice. It's nice to see friends. It's nice to actually go out, be social. What a strange time it is to be alive today, where like the only real socializing we're doing these days. Hey, Pissed Off, how you doing, bud? Good vibes, good vibes. I'm trying. God help me, I'm trying. I think that one of the things that has me in a bit of a good mood today is that I'm seeing people start to take Aaron O'Toole as a credible threat, and they're not driving towards a majority. So over this next week, I hope we start to see a significant challenge to Aaron O'Toole as a leader. Because I think that there are many concerns, many things for us to be worried about when it comes to Aaron O'Toole. And the number one is that I'm not even seeing like a, oh, you already voted? You voted by mail-in already? You can do that? Oh, wow. Look at you. Getting ahead of the game. I love it. I love it, bud. That's great. Oh, I managed to burn my finger today, so everything I do is like tinged with this little like, oh, is this gonna hurt? Is this gonna hurt? Oh my goodness, is this gonna hurt? So hopefully everything is good. Well, I hope that you feel satisfied with who you voted for, bud. It was very strange time indeed. Very, very strange time indeed. I know for me, I'm going to be voting NDP. I think that the NDP are the ones that actually have a platform. I think that they're the ones that are actually listening to the populace. I just wish that the populace would listen back. So before we get into any of that, as we always do here today, we're going to do David Lynch. It's going to pull a number for us. So pick your number. Maybe today it's your magical time. Maybe today is the time that you are going to get. I am going with 6.
Here we go for today's number.
Yesterday's number was 9.
It's
So let's see.
September
2 in a row.
2021.
Oh, he's pretty dark. Here
10
we go.
balls.
Here we go. 10 balls.
Each ball has a number.
It's a number. Swirl
Numbers 1 through 10.
Numbers.
Swirl the numbers.
My favorite part. My favorite part. Swirl the numbers. Here we go. What did I say? I said 6, right? That's what I
Pick
said?
a number.
I said 6, you said 9, so...
Today's number is...
If either of those are picked, 3.
3.
3 is divided into 6, right, and 9, so I say that we won. Don't you think, right? What is a 3 if not just half of 6 and a third of 9, right? So we did it, bud. We did it. Yeah. All right. Let's get into what's going on today. I love this shot, by the way. I've actually been here. I think this is on, I forget exactly where this is. I think this is the Bruce Peninsula, though. But this is absolutely beautiful. You go on in here. DM, wouldn't it be funny if David accidentally dropped the jar and broke it? That would be a real bad luck day, wouldn't it? That'd be the real bad luck day. Oh my goodness. Good to see you, DM. Glad you're in here, bud. Okay, so today, because I went and saw a friend and I didn't have time really to cobble anything together, it's going to be kind of a hodgepodgey sort of a day, but whatever. It's hump day, right? It's Wednesday, right? The classic hump day, but I love it. Gamer set on, Knuckles cracked, Farmer Care canceled. Yep, it's disappointing liberal platform time. My response is, of course, the liberals have a platform, right? The liberal platform is, I am more convinced by the day that Justin Trudeau is conceding, that he doesn't want to like actually resign and actually step down and actually give up, but like these liberals, there's so many things that they could be pushing on. There's so many things that they could be doing. There's so many buttons they could pull. There's so many levers they could pull. There's so much that they could be doing right now to try to convince the populace to vote liberal, and they're just not. They're just not doing it. That the best that they're doing is looking at the conservatives, seeing what the conservative platform is, and matching it. Unless their strategy is genuinely to try to like knock it up in the debates, which I think that is Jugmeat's strategy at this stage, is to just like knock it up at the debates. I don't see them running. Like, I don't see them even running a campaign. Do you? Yeah, Tories ahead in the polls about 3%. I mean, we could take a look at the aggregate, right? The seat projection right now has the Conservatives in a minority position. Looks like the Conservatives is sort of plateaued at this. Like, they had a big climb, but now, like, if you look through the history of it, the history of the polling data, you can see like they went up and now they're kind of crested and like they're kind of riding this sort of wave. We are seeing some of the polls, you can see here with the NDP. The NDPers have been really banging on this idea that like, yeah, the NDP, we're surging in the polls. But like the surging in the polls is like a couple of polls that came out with them a little bit up, right? Which is good news, great, but when you take it as the aggregate, it's not enough to push them upwards into more seat territory, as what happened with the Conservatives, right? You can see it, that the Conservatives started to trend upwards, right? And only now are they starting to get back with a couple of polls that are putting them back in their place a little bit. But like, so it looks like the Conservatives had a bit of a crest. If NDP could get to 25 by next week, that would be nice. That'd be a minor miracle if you ask me. I do think, though, like, if I wanted to not be an alarmist, right? Because, like, the alarmist inside of me is screaming, conservative majority, oh my God, conservative majority, everybody ring the bells, the white supremacists are getting it's a big problem, all this kind of stuff. But if I want to not be an alarmist, and I want to think about this more from just, like, the human standpoint, that the people who are swinging towards conservative are not swinging towards conservative because they're like, I like that Aaron O'Toole man. I think Aaron O'Toole's got a good idea and a good plan and a good policy. I think Aaron O'Toole's got what it takes to be the leader of this country. I don't think that's how Canadians are going and answering these polls. I think that Canadians are very much like, Justin Trudeau has been nothing but a disaster and calling this election early and all this. So you know what? I'm just going conservative as is. Conservative, right? And I think that it's less about support for the Conservatives and more about anger at the Liberals. And so we've had this like spark out of anger, right, which has manifested in real ways in protest movements and protest generally against the Liberals. But now, what that means though is that now you have this like fussy base that's detached themselves from the Liberals that could be scooped up by NDP, right? That the NDP can come along and be like, okay, I get we're all angry at the Liberals. Let's actually take a look at who Aaron O'Toole is, though, and actually take a look at what his platform actually is, and compare it to the NDP platform. Wouldn't you prefer to go NDP? And there is a narrative, and it is believable. It's not just pie-in-the-sky hope that says that all of these people that blew over to Conservative because fuck the Liberals, well, they could get pulled into the NDP camp with just some very simple, very clean point making, right? Like very simple stuff like come on. I had this already. It was going to be great. You guys are going to be like, wow, John's so smart. What a smart, intelligent, pretty, beautiful man. I mean, you do have stuff like this, hidden in Conservative platform, an attack on public pensions and EI, right? you do have the climate change. Yeah, there it is. I knew I had it. Look at that. I'm ready to go. Let's all pretend as though I just hit this and it was like perfect, right? So, people are starting to put together that the Conservatives' plan for climate change is not good, right? It's not good. Like, the 2030 target is the lowest of all the parties, right? The carbon price set maybe 170 for industry, 50% for households, whereas the Liberals are saying 170 for all. The NDP haven't come out with anything, so there's a ping on them. But in terms of new sales for electric vehicles, 30% by 2030, 50% by 2030, 100% by 2035, whereas the NDP are saying 100% by 2035, same as Liberals. But this, in my view, is the big tipper, right? Where do we go? Come on. Again. Oh, here we go. Fossil fuel subsidies. The Conservatives want to increase fossil fuel subsidies. They've said so, right? And this is coming from University of BC professor Catherine Harrison, right? So this is a person who's done the research. This isn't just some YouTube guy who's being like, oh, look at this. This is the information I found. This is like a professor who has said this is what it is, that the Conservatives want to increase fossil fuel subsidies. Do you think that's a good idea? Do you think it's a good idea to increase fossil fuel subsidies while attempting to get off of fossil fuels? Probably not, right? The Liberals, of course, silent on this. The NDP want to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies. So, like, I think that we have had our hot-blooded moment where people have sparked off of the Liberals and have finally broken up with Justin Trudeau. Now, these next week are going to be the real tale of can those guys calm down, actually observe who's actually offering something, and come to rational conclusions, right? Come to simple conclusions of like, look, you think climate change is a problem. We need to be focusing on climate change. We all agree that climate change is something that we need to do something about. Well, are you going to vote for the guy that's increasing the subsidies to the fossil fuel industry? Or are you going to vote for the guy that's voting to eliminate subsidies to the fossil fuel industry? Something that we all know needs to happen. Like, we all know it. Like, who's walking around pretending like we can continue subsidizing the fossil fuel industry while also attempting to destroy it, right? But pissed off, you're right about this. Like, Bill C-20 in Quebec could be Jagmeet. You know what my problem is with Jagmeet Singh and his name? Is that I use his name mockingly when I pretend to be a conservative. And I go, I'm a conservative and I'm going to say Jagmeet. And, oh, that Jagmeet. Yeah, I really like Jagmeet. And then when I do that, it makes me lose all of the gains that I have calling him Jagmeet. I promise that I'm a good commentator, guys. I promise that I know what I'm talking about. I promise. Please don't judge me because I mispronounced Jagmeet Singh's name. Oh my God. Ugh. Fucking embarrassing. I think you're right. If he stands against it, he loses Quebec. If he doesn't, he comes off as weak. And I mean, Quebec is a huge problem for Jagmeet Singh, right? Like, these guys are voting to make sure that people can't, like, that government employees won't wear turbans and stuff, right? That's what they're voting for in Quebec. And here comes Jagmeet Singh, hey, can I be your leader? Like, it's a tough situation all around. And it's what I've been talking about this whole time, that, like, Canadians have been saying to pollsters, oh yeah, I like Jagmeet Singh. They've been saying that they like Jagmeet Singh, but I'm beginning to see, like, that's not much different from, like, an old slaveholder being like, oh yeah, that boy in the field there, I really like that boy. He does good work, all of that. No, I'm not going to set him free. Like, they like him, but they're not going to vote for him. What's hilarious to me is there's nothing conservative about spending massive amounts of money on oil. Yeah, exactly. Like, what exactly are they conserving? Like, what are we conserving here? Like, and what you come to realize is what they are conserving is neoliberal capitalism. They're not interested in conserving the earth. They're not interested in conserving, sustainable living, or they're not interested in conserving human life. They're not interested in conserving any of that. They're interested in conserving neoliberal capitalism, which is why they are death cultists, right? That they are doubling down on an ideology that is a death cult. And there's just like nothing more to be said about it, honestly. Like they believe in a fantasy fiction that doesn't exist, that has been discredited, that is a fraud, that we all abandoned the second a crisis hit, right? Like, you really want to double down on a system that you must abandon the moment there's a crisis, right? The pandemic started and we all had to abandon neoliberal capitalism. We had to. We didn't have a choice. Neoliberal capitalism marches us to our own deaths. Take a look at what's happening in the United States, for God's sakes, right? Like, the people there are begging and pleading for neoliberal capitalism, and it's just murdering them. It's causing mass death throughout the society, and like, this is what we want. We really want a system that is so non-resilient. How long can they keep Ford in hiding? Until the election's over. It's not much longer. Right, Ford hiding it's like, and this is another thing that we got to start saying to these conservative guys who like flipped over to conservative from liberal. Like, take a look at Doug Ford's legacy, take a look at Kenny's legacy, take a look at Pallister's legacy. Is this genuinely what you want in your federal leader? You genuinely want your federal leader to come in and inflict mass austerity on the populace? That's what you want? Really? And, like, don't pretend like that's not going to happen. Like, the people who are standing around being like, oh, but those were provincial and this was conservative. Like, fuck you. Like, that's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to try to hide behind that idea. That, like, the conservatives have always committed mass austerity against the populace. That's what they've always done. In the last 40 years, that's everything they've ever done. Why would you, at this moment, when it's the most crucial to have actual leadership in power that's actually working to confront capital, why would you ever vote for these guys? I can't think of one solid reason outside of, oh, the liberals are, oh, the liberals. Like, it's so dumb. It's so dumb to vote conservative right now. And, like, you have situations, right? O'Toole tries to distance himself from his former self, right? Go through, like, O'Toole's statements. Like, if your view of O'Toole isn't this chubby guy, right? If you genuinely think that because he lost weight in the last year that suddenly he's a different dude, like, this dude here is who Aaron O'Toole is, and we've even got him now. Definitely had this prepared. Here we go. This comes from Vicky Campbell. Parler is a platform for people who engage in far-right conspiracy theories and mingle with other white supremacists. So O'Toole's Parler account and conversation says more about him than he'd like you to know. Jesse Hawken. Mr. O'Toole, how do you explain this conversation on Parler with a white supremacist? That was not me, that was a staffer. Mr. O'Toole, quick follow-up question. Why was your staffer having a conversation with a white supremacist using your Parler account? And if you go into the conversation itself, right, Tommy Robinson says, Black Lives Matter Antifa Marxists have toppled the statue of Canada's first Prime Minister, John MacDonald, in Montreal today. Another warped attack on history. Aaron O'Toole's staffer's response, Canada wouldn't exist without Sir John A. Macdonald. Canada is a country, and one we should be proud of. We cannot build a better future without being mindful of our past. I think politicians should grow a backbone and stand up for our country. And of course, what's well understood between these two people when they say our country, they mean white people's country. Let's be extremely clear. Like, Aaron O'Toole is a white supremacist. Like, I don't know what more we need to see. And the amount of absolute simping and the amount of, like, delusion that I've encountered on this, the amount of excuse making that people are trying to pretend, like Aaron O'Toole outright said that the residential school system was well intended and then turned wrong. This means that he's both illiterate and also incorrect. that the residential school system was erected explicitly with the intent of killing the Indian. That was the intent of it. You can go and read the transcripts while they were passing the legislation. They weren't sitting there being like, we have to educate these First Nations people to help them improve their quality of life with high education, and then we will, as a one people, join together in love and harmony. They were explicitly saying, this Indian problem needs to stop. The way to do that is to eradicate their culture and kill the Indian. Like, Aaron O'Toole is a white supremacist who wants to protect these people, who wants to ensure that people don't know that the white supremacist history of Canada is the history of Canada, and he wants to protect that history, right? Like, this idea that Aaron O'Toole is going to get into power and all of that white supremacy is not going to matter, right? All that white supremacy is not going to play into how he runs the place. Yeah, get fucked. Like, get fucked if you're walking around saying that dumb shit. And speaking of dumb shit, right, here's a protest against vaccine passports at Queen's Park, right? We don't like inoculation records. We don't like inoculation records. Inoculation records, which have existed for hundreds of years, are bad. And of course, here's the great meme. Taking 5 seconds to show a Vax card at the gym. Taking 5 hours to chant at Queen's Park. Absolutely. I think we are headed into a future world where there will be actually are no governments. Territories will be owned by corporations and oligarchs instead of countries. I mean, that is like a pretty major dystopia, viewpoint. But like, the governments we have now are essentially formalities, right? Like, they really are. They're just essentially formalities. Because who owns those governments? It's not us, right? Like, it's already the corporations. It's already like, and in the United States, that was explicitly by design, that the Congress and the Senate and the presidency, like, that whole thing was set up just to allow businesses to communicate with one another, right? It wasn't set up for the benefit of the people. It was set up for the benefit so that these corporations and these oligarchs, so that like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, you know, the owners, right? So that they could get in a room with one another and communicate with one another about how to rule, right? That George Washington didn't want to become a king. And so they created a system to allow everybody to kind of share the burden of power, right? While communicating with one another about how to maintain power amongst the white slaveholders, right? Like that was the purpose of the American system, explicitly built to be that way. James Madison even went so far as to explicitly say within the Constitution that it's designed to ensure that power always remains in, quote unquote, the wealth of the nation. Because James Madison was confronted with the issue of the major problem with democracy if you're a white slaveholder, right? It's the same problem that Aristotle ran into when he was studying democracy. That they came to the problem of democracy, and which is that the people will just vote to redistribute wealth, right? That if you have a democracy, then we'll just redistribute the wealth, and that's no good if you're a white slaveholder, right? And so Aristotle's solution was, well, just create a strong enough welfare state, right? So everyone has access to good food and shelter, right? And then they won't really have a reason to want to rise up and take away your power, right? That's the Aristotle solution. It's the solution that I ascribe to, because I do think that most people are just like, oh, if I had my food and shelter taken care of and like access to like a luxury market, right? Why would I care if this guy has like, why would I give a shit if Jeff Bezos is shooting himself to the moon, right? I don't give a fuck. Like, my food and shelter is taken care of. I have basic goods, all of this. Like, that's fine. Oh, good for Jeff Bezos then. Oh, he did it. He shot a rocket to the moon. Good for him. James Madison said, no, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do instead of that is ensure that the system can't be engaged with on a representative level unless you're rich, right? So only rich people can participate as a representative in the system, which is exactly the purpose of the American democracy, if you want to call it that. Which, of course, now we're facing a major problem. Hey, King Ivan, how you doing? I haven't seen you here in a long time. Good to see you, bud. So, of course, this is manifest multiple problems because the power has been in the wealth of the nation, and the wealth of the nation is not actually interested in giving a shit about the populace, right? So because we didn't listen to Aristotle and say, hey, you need to create a strong welfare state in order to stabilize your democracy, instead of that, we are going to end up with like pretty major civil war, I think. Pretty major one. I think that the civil war that happens throughout the United States is going to be fairly major. It might rival the original Civil War. That school is rolling again. Been quite busy. Can't wait for those COVID numbers to spike right up. What are you taking, King? Yeah, and I'm with you, Garden Mice. Good to see you too, by the way. They already are, just wearing the hat of government, yeah. As living standards slip backwards, corporations will offer housing and food security in return for indentured employment, yeah. In other words, they will create a new style of slavery, where if you don't sign on, you and your family will be homeless, starving and unprotected from competing power blocks. Yeah, what you're describing is the rise of feudalism, right? That neo-feudalism is already here, like the structure of it is already here. Like, you're gonna work for like Lord Future Shop or Baron Best Buy, right? Like, in all but title. And eventually the titles will come back. Just wait for that. Like, the titles will show up, they'll manifest. People love titles. Still online, fortunately. Good for you, bud. Doing a computer systems course on my last year. Good for you, bud. Good for you, yeah. I wish that I had the patience and ability to actually do some kind of computer coding. Anytime I've done anything like that, it's just been like a nail that's just like pushed into the side of my head. Just like, if I had to do that as my job, I literally would hang myself. Like, this is the most amount of connection that I think I can manage when it comes to computers. That's also the plot to the Sorry to Bother You movie. Sorry to bother you. Sorry to bother you. Sorry to bother you. That's ringing a bell. Sorry to bother you. I can't show clips and stuff because I'll get shut off. Oh, this is the fellow, a black fellow, obviously, who goes into telemarketing, right? I don't know anything about this. Lord Black. Yeah. Good old Conrad Black, raving sociopath. Every time I see this one come up, I think to myself, I should watch this. And then I just forget about it. And of course, like, from the National Observer, right? Should I read this one? I think I will. I'm going to read this one because National Observer, great source, National Observer, by Max Fawcett. Yes, but then there's basically a communist revolution. Now I need to watch this film, man. I got to watch this film. Hey, Dan Boxes, how you doing? Amazing movie. Suggest you watch is made by Comrade Boots Riley. Done. I'm going to watch it tonight. You guys got me. Bazinga. I'm in. Sold. Absolutely sold. I've been reading Dune. Yeah, it really is apparent the future we're headed towards. You are now lordly based on your income. Yeah, right? And, like, don't pretend like these guys aren't Harkonnens, right? Like, don't pretend like the fucking rulers of this place aren't Harkonnens. Like, they're fucking Harkonnens, dude. Like, we're ruled by Harkonnens. Like, they're smart enough to know that when the cameras are on and when things are rolling, they gotta smile. But it's getting harder for them. Like, somebody like the Trumps, like the Trumps, when they smile at the camera, you can see in their face that they're evil. right? Like, you can see that they're Harkonnens. Like, the pretend fake smile, while their dead eyes are just constantly trying to find a way to how do I get an in here in order to manipulate you, right? That they're not genuine. Yeah, it's the Harkonnen for sure. Okay. Aaron O'Toole's climate plan would push Canada backwards fast. Here's the thing to clip. The now defunct Northern Gateway Pipeline project is both a monument to the failed Harper-era policy of petronationalism and a testament to the power of Indigenous communities and those fighting for their rights. It's emblematic of a past when concerns about climate change were far less important to the Government of Canada than the interests of Alberta's oil and gas sector. And for some strange reason, Aaron O'Toole wants to bring it back from the dead. This would be a fatal blow to any hope Canada has of reaching its net zero emissions target by 2050. Under the scenario the International Energy Agency laid out earlier this year, there are no new oil and gas fields approved for development in our pathway, and no new coal mines or mine extensions are required. There's certainly no need, then, for a new pipeline capable of moving more than 500,000 barrels per day, especially when Canada already has more than enough capacity to move its existing production to markets. When pressed by the Globe and Mail to explain how he squares the circle between his support for a new oil pipeline and his promise to help Canada meet its emission reduction targets, O'Toole declined to answer the question. This contradiction is at the heart of the climate plan O'Toole is trying to sell to Canadians. Yes, it includes carbon pricing, but it tops out at $50 per ton, far below the levels needed to actually drive meaningful emissions reductions. And while he has pledged to meet Canada's commitments under the Paris agreements, he only means the ones made in 2015, not 2021. Rather than reducing Canada's greenhouse gas emissions by 40 to 45% from 2005 levels, as the federal government already announced earlier this year, O'Toole plans to backpedal to the 30% target from 2015. Given that Canada's current policies already have us tracking towards a 36% reduction according to the Parliamentary Budget Office, O'Toole's plan represents a deliberate step backwards for Canada. As Polaris Strategies' Dan Wojnilowicz, Dan Wojnilowicz noted on Twitter, O'Toole's options would be limited to violating the Paris Agreement, a legally binding treaty, or, like Donald Trump, beginning the process of withdrawing Canada from it. In 2011, O'Toole's climate plan might have passed muster, but in 2021, it's a blueprint for going backwards at the very moment the rest of the world is pressing ahead on climate change. Yes, it's better than what Andrew Scheer tried to fob off on Canadians in 2019, but that's the textbook definition of damning with faint praise. And while it claims to believe in the importance of reducing emissions, its preferred and proposed methods for doing that raise some major red flags. After all, while it accepts carbon pricing in theory, the actual practice it proposes is so absurd that it practically borders on a Monty Python sketch. Canadians will be credited for the carbon they burn, which doesn't sound like a great way to get them to burn less of it. As the Globe and Mail's Andrew Coyne wrote, rather than simply admit they were wrong, the Tories have twisted the idea into something unrecognizable. Indeed, one might have thought impossible. A carbon tax that does not reduce carbon consumption. It gets more absurd, though. The credits O'Toole's Conservatives are proposing would go into a personal low carbon savings account and would only be available for use on government-approved green products. This would create an enormous new layer of bureaucracy and government oversight, and it's a curious idea coming from a party that likes to talk about the dangers of regulation and red tape. If O'Toole doesn't end up as Prime Minister, Cirque du Soleil might want to consider employing him as a contortionist. Are we well past the point where we can delude ourselves into thinking we can have our cake and eat it too on climate change? Things like expanding the oil and gas industry and rewarding people for burning more carbon are fundamentally at odds with reducing greenhouse gas emissions and meeting our actual climate targets. If conservatives actually want to be taken seriously on this issue, it's long past time they stopped pretending otherwise. As Coyne wrote, the conservatives don't want a plan that works, still less one they might actually have to implement. They just want a plan they can wave around for a while, then discard. If Canadian voters genuinely care about climate change, they'll do themselves a favor and put O'Toole's plan in the trash can before he gets a chance to do it himself. This is from Max Fawcett, writing in the National Observer. You know you're in serious trouble as a Conservative Party leader if Andrew Coyne is writing against you. Like, Andrew Coyne, I have him pegged as a red Tory, right? He's not one of these neoliberal types. Like, he's not. He believes in small government. He believes in the red Tory sort of conservative sort of stuff. But he's not on board with these neoliberals, man. And it's really, really getting obvious. Like, Andrew Coyne wants something done about climate change, and he is calling these conservatives out, which is great, which is good. Because, like, hey, have you noticed that climate change is the most pressing existential issue of our time? Have you noticed that it's actually more threatening than even the fucking Nazis? Have you noticed how the damage that climate change has the potential to do is going to overwhelm the damage that has been done, that was done during World War II and since then? Have you noticed that the money we're saving by not confronting climate change is going to be spent 10 times over dealing with the catastrophe that is climate change? Like, why in the world would you ever think for a moment that Aaron O'Toole and the Conservatives are the people to put in charge at this moment? Why would you ever think that's the case? Unless, of course, you're completely fucking deluded and you don't think that climate change is an issue, which the Conservative Party doesn't. Remember, over half the party, voted saying that climate change doesn't exist. These are the guys that you want in power? These are the guys? That would be like saying to me, there's an invading army smashing on the gates, banging to come in. You can go to the gates and look down and see them. There they are, hammering on the gates. You can hear them hammering on the gates. You know that they're coming to destroy you and your family. You know that they're out there. And the king that you want to pay fealty to is saying, there's no army. Everyone calm down. This is so overwrought. Or even better, he goes, oh yes, there's an army out there, but it's going to take them so long to get through the gate. No, don't worry. Your children are safe. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to... I mean, we could build defenses, I suppose. Take your time. Take your time. How long would you listen to that from that king before you started to reach the conclusion that I think that king might be working with the guys outside hammering on the gates? How long would it take you before you figured out, hey, maybe we need to get rid of this fucking king because he's obviously working with these guys, right? And this is who you want to give power to, that you want to give power to that king. No, I think you're a buffoon. Like, I think if you're saying that, you're genuinely a buffoon. Hey Ruth, how you doing? Good to see you. Tornadoes and fires and floods, oh my. 60 million in flash flood warning northeast. Tornado Alley's going crazy land. Toho on fire. Yeah, it's a fucking disaster, eh? It's a fucking disaster. Oh, but don't worry, guys. Climate change, not a big deal, right? Not a big deal. Not a big fucking deal. The famines are going to be the worst, man. When the famines start, I say we start spitting on these conservatives. Like, outright, like, if somebody stands up and says they're a conservative, I say we spit on them. Like, the famines are going to be absolutely the moment where it's all undeniable. Where it's completely undeniable. Like, your children are starving. Yeah, these guys were saying climate change didn't exist. Get fucked, right? Get fucked. And in my view, the famines are basically unavoidable at this point. Like, we could get to a point where, like, the famines go down and then we pull up and everything kind of neutralizes and we're back up. And so we just have, like, a famine moment. But if we continue in this way, like, the famines are going to become common, bigger, larger, especially as things start to desertify more and more. We start to lose more ground, right? Like, it's and I know the famines are going to be the most brutal part of this, because no one wants to talk about them, right? It's such a horrific idea. It's such a terrifying, horror-filled idea that people can't even look at it. They can't even take the time and glance over to look at it. Yeah, let's not forget Louisiana, no power or water. Yeah, big shocker, Louisiana's abandoned again. No fucking surprise there. We all remember Katrina, right? Katrina was a full-scale abandonment. Like, Louisiana has been abandoned since then. Like, the federal government doesn't give a fuck about these places. They don't care, right? It's just black people. Who gives a fuck? I mean, I give a fuck. I please do not clip that out of context. Somebody put a quote in the chat yesterday, like, trying to be like, oh, well, socialism doesn't work because, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, literally, I honor Lenin as a man who completely sacrificed himself and devoted all his energy to the realization of social justice. One thing is certain, men of his type are the guardians and restorers of humanity. Good enough for Albert Einstein, good enough for me. Flat out. Like, flat out. Good enough for Albert Einstein, good enough for me. I don't need to, like, does anybody disagree with the idea that Albert Einstein was a good man? Right? I think anybody who tried to stand up and say that Albert Einstein is a bad person, I think is nuts. Right? Like, and everybody would look at it and be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, Albert Einstein is like, he is like a modern genius. He's one of the names that like, he's considered so good and such a brilliant man that you say his name to refer to someone doing something smart or doing something stupid in a sarcastic way. Good move, Einstein, right? Like, he's the icon of modern intelligence. I honor Lenin as a man who completely sacrificed himself and devoted all his energy to the realization. Like, this isn't fucking Thomas Sowell or some fucking, like, capitalist in South America saying some dumb shit. It's fucking Albert Einstein. Like, get fucked. I'm actually going to bookmark this so that I can, like, literally say get fucked to these guys when they come in with their dumb quotes, their stupid moronic, like, oh, if a man that gets his wealth taken away, the man, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. The power is ours. At this point, destroying capitalism is self-defense. Change my mind. For real, I would love if somebody actually attempted to debate me on this point. At this point, destroying capitalism is self-defense. If somebody tried to take the other side of that, I would love to fucking slam dunk on these idiots. Like, put me in front of whoever. I don't care. Put me in front of, like, whoever you think is a super genius. Whoever you think the icon of the modern age is. Like, let me talk to fucking Ben Shapiro. Let me talk to fucking Jordan Peterson. Let me talk to any politician, any scientist, anybody that you think is smart who wants to be on the other side of that. Please let me slam dunk on these idiots. Like, please let me just be like... Because, like, capitalism is destroying us. Like, it's just destroying us. And it's becoming less and less arguable. And it's becoming more and more obvious. Like, we are reaching, like, a crisis fever pitch moment. And people are beginning to put together what I've been saying all this time, that these capitalists are not doing anything. Like, their system doesn't work, right? We work, right? We do the work, they do nothing. They get all the benefit. Why? Because they got a piece of paper that says they own everything. Oh, where did that piece of paper come from? Well, we wrote the piece of paper down when we killed the First Nations people and enslaved the black population. And so then we gave it to our sons. And every so often we sell these papers to each other, you know, so the system works. What the fuck? Like, what the absolute fuck? Jesus Christ. Like, I love this from the Beaverton. Liberals announce election platform of things they could have easily done before now. This is like my complete opinion of the Liberal platform. Like, it's nothing. It's nothing. Like, everything that they have in their platform, they literally could just do like a one-pager and put through. Like, and all of it is like basically non-controversial shit. Like, it's not erecting new institutions. It's not redirecting anything. It's nothing structural, right? It's all just like, we're going to hire 1,000 firefighters. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, who gives a fuck? Are you kidding me? Besides all this election crap, now we're dealing with passport, masking, and vaccines. I just have no patience or empathy left. Like, my empathy for the people who are refusing to go get vaccinated is gone. Like, it is. Like, I encourage everyone to go get vaccinated. I'm going to go get my second shot tomorrow. Just put a cap on it, be finished with it. But, like, we know what happens if you don't do this. Like, we have seen it. The proof is in, like, it's right in front of you. Like, it's right in front of you. And, like, this is what's so embarrassing about the vaccine conversation is, like, we have, it's right in front of you. You're watching people die. You're seeing it happen. You're literally watching it with your eyes, right? And still being like, nah. And like, these people are who we're dealing with in regards to climate change. So I'm sorry to say it, but I'll say it over and over again, right? Oh, we have a vaccine to protect you from this disease, from this virus. You won't take it. And oh, you also happen to be a person who denies the existence of climate change? I'm sorry, man. Like, your death is not a loss. Like, if you die, great. Like, congratulations, you played yourself. Right? And it turns out that your death is actually a benefit for the rest of us, because that means that you're no longer going to be supporting anti-climate change nonsense. And if that makes me sound like a monster to you, I don't really care. Like, I really, truly don't. Like, we literally have the cure. It's in our hands. We're giving it away for free. You literally need to show up at a place, right? Take the jab, right? It couldn't be easier. It couldn't be easier. And the reason you're giving for why you refuse to do this is because you don't like being told what to do. You're a 5-year-old. You're a 5-year-old. Like, that's the logic of a baby, man. Like, you're just like a little child walking around pretending as though the most important thing that matters on the planet is what you think. Grow up. Grow up. Go get the jab. Stop fucking around. Welcome to the real world. Welcome to the adult world, right? And, incidentally, sorry for helping you. Like, sorry. Sorry for being so helpful. Sorry for making this so easy for you, right? Like, that's the most embarrassing part about all of this, is this vaccine situation could not have been made more easy. Even the Americans made it easy. Even the Americans said, like, yep, we'll give away the vaccine for free. Yep, we'll create, like, you can just come over, walk over, we'll give it to you, right? Give you a little slip of paper, says you got it, right? Something called a fucking vaccination record. This whole vaccine passport narrative, this vaccine passport slogan, right? That's straight out some far-right fascist sloganeering right there. These are vaccination records. Everyone's got a vaccination record, right? You have a vaccination record. Right? Oh, this guy got vaccinated. Let's give him his vaccination record. No, it's a vaccine passport, right? It's a vaccine passport, Get fucked. Get fucked. And we've just fallen for it. We've just fallen for it hook, line, and sinker, right? We're just walking around being like, oh, it's a vaccine passport. You can't get into all places if you don't have your passport. You mean your fucking vaccination records, right? Like, that literally have existed for hundreds of years and are completely non-controversial, right? Oh, the fascists are in power because we have vaccination records. Like, fuck off. It's just so childish. And I'm out. When it comes to empathizing with these guys, if they want to kill themselves, let's let them, right? In fact, let's speed that up. Can we speed that up? Is there a way to let these guys kill themselves faster? Like, get out of the discourse. I'm so tired. I'm so tired of these guys slowing everything down, right? I'm so tired of these guys slowing everything down. That we've got shit to do. Like, we've got shit that we need to be doing, right? But we're constantly weighed down by these child people, these childish, insipid idiots who are walking around refusing to take something that is free, have a moment where they feel a little, I feel a little sick. I got the jam, I feel a little sick for a couple of days. Put me down for a couple of days, right? They buried their parents, and now they'll bury themselves and their kids right next to them in their backyards. Yeah, and they don't care about their kids. Like, this is the thing I keep saying over and over again, right? These guys don't even give a shit about their own families. They don't give a shit about their own kids, right? If they gave a shit about their own kids, the first thing they would do is go get this fucking vaccine. But no, Bill Gates put nanobots in it. Bill Gates put some nanobots in that vaccine. It's gonna track me and keep me. Yeah, okay, Hubert, because like where you go is really interesting, right? Yeah, it's super important that Bill Gates knows where you go. You fucking redneck hick, right? And let's be straight. Like, let's be straight. Like, where do these guys not want people knowing where they're going? The Klan rally. That's what. Like, fuck you. Like, fuck you. Where do these guys want to make sure that the government doesn't know where they're going, or where Bill Gates doesn't know where they're going? The Klan rally. That's where they don't want to get tracked to. That's why they're so fucking dig their heels in. No, I don't want you to know I'm at the Klan rally. Oh, hey, so we put a tracking device inside of that vaccine, just like you said we did, and we can't help but notice that there's a massive gathering here in Louisiana, but 1,000 people just right in the middle of fucking nowhere. All of a sudden, what do you think happened there? What do you think happened there? They also get mad when you ask them about your right to not die. Yeah. Well, because they don't care about you, right? And you can't bring up caring about someone else, right? You can't bring that up, right? Because again, the only thing that matters to these guys is them. Right? What they think and their ideas. And if you start talking about like, well, hey, shouldn't you think about like anybody else in the world? They'll get mad, right? Because even the idea that they should have to think about someone else other than themselves is an affront. They're so selfish. They're so self-involved. They're so arrogant. They're so detached from the idea of society or community or any of this that even the suggestion that they have to pay attention to something other than themselves is an affront. Like, you should be thinking about them. That's it. They're the only thing that matters, right? Why would you think about anything other than them, right? The idea that you are in opposition to them by itself is an effrontery. Like, I can't wait for these guys to get out of the discourse. I'm really looking forward to it. And the great irony of it is that they're doing it to themselves. Like, that's the great beauty of it. That's the reason I have zero empathy. It's because they're doing it to themselves, right? We don't have to do anything. We literally just need to kind of stand back and be like, okay, well, if that's the way you're going to do, right? And then, like, they get mad at us because we look at them and say, yeah, we're not going to let you in the club, bud. Like, we're not going to let you in the door of the restaurant, right? You do nothing for us, but we're supposed to do everything for you? Weird that's actually not how fucking things work in an adult world where adults live. We have a very specific thing that we would like you to do. Get the vaccine, and you're not doing it, so get fucked. Very straightforward. Very straightforward, right? I have zero empathy for these guys. They can cry and squall and protest and stamp their feet and do all that kind of fucking shit that they want to do. The reality is that I'm going to make it to old age and they won't, and I'm really looking forward to them not being around. Humanity still has a lot of... Well, the Western world especially. Like, the Western world especially. Like, the idea that we could run this place just with, like, the free market. The idea that the best way to organize a society, like millions of people, the best way to organize millions and millions of people is to have no organizational structure whatsoever, right? The idea that, the free market will decide. Chaos will reign, and what occurs will be for the benefit of the people living under the reign of chaos. That's what they're saying. Like, that's what they're saying. Like, that's Reaganomics 101, right? The government is the problem. Like, literally create no plan, have no vision for the future, have no ideas, just follow the number thing going up, right? Oh, number go up equal good, right? Like, it is that childish. Number go up, good, right? Doesn't matter if you're dumping toxic waste out the back of your factory. Doesn't matter if you're poisoning all of these people. Doesn't matter if you're poisoning a water supply over here. Number go up, good, right? Number, right? The idea that this is the central organizing thesis of our society and has been for 40 fucking years tells you that we're probably like on the same intellectual capacity as about a 4-year-old. I think that the West is about 4, right? Hasn't gotten older than that. Its defenders certainly sound like 4-year-olds, right? And if you actually stand up and say like, hey, maybe we should have a plan. Oh, the government is coming in 1984 and they just throw a temper tantrum. They just throw a little 4-year-old temper tantrum because they're very stupid and obviously completely detached from anything resembling reality, right? Like, oh no, the worst thing that can happen to you is that you get a vaccine. That's the worst thing that happens. Okay. Yep, give enough rope, they'll hang themselves. Exactly. The free market isn't free, Mock. That's exactly right. Well, because the question that needs to be asked is, free to do what? Right? So it's a free market. Free to do what? Exactly. And when you investigate that question, what are we free to do? We're free to have slaves, right? We're free to have slaves, and we're free to enslave people, and we're free to bomb people, and we're free to destroy and pollute the environment. We're free to do that. Well, that's kind of an odd definition of freedom, don't you think? Right? That the thing that people don't really realize about the free market is that, it's the market that's free. Not you. You're not free. It's the market that's free. It's called a free market, not a free person. They're talking about boycotting stores that have vax passports. I'm saying, thank goodness, please stay home. Yeah. Oh no. Oh no. You're gonna boycott, right? Oh no. Like, oh damn. You're not going to come into my establishment with your putrid bile and spit shit all over the place. Oh no! All of my customers are going to be nice. Damn. Stupid and scared is no way to go through life, son. Yeah. How you doing, Bubble Guppy? How you doing? Well, and in many ways, like, humbling yourself and finding humility to the power of the universe, like, this is how you don't find freedom or compassion or empathy or stability in your own life by buckling down and thinking like, it's all me, it's got to be me, right? Like, what a horrific way to go through life. That the way to go through life is to look at the incredible power of the universe and humble yourself to it and just be like, okay, like, if the universe wants me crushed, I'm crushed. Like, I can go out and get that vaccine. I can do all that kind of stuff. And if the universe is just like, nah, you're gone, bud. You're gone, right? There's nothing to it. And once you come to that realization that the universe can just, like, at any moment, well, then what are you scared of? Like, really, what are you scared of? Like, you're gonna go eventually, right? Like, you're gonna go eventually. What are you scared of? Jugmeat should really get more aggressive. Not impressed with his soft, gentle ads. Jugmeat's in a rock and a hard place on that one, bud. He's in a rock and a hard place on that one. He already can't get people to vote for him because he's wearing that turban, right? That's already what's happening. Like, if Jagmeet Singh was walking around, if Jagmeet Singh's name was Jason Singer, and he was just like a white dude who looked like Jack Layton walking around, people would be voting for that guy in droves. His numbers would be off the charts right now. But because he's a brown dude with a turban and a beard, nah, forget it. Like, small incremental, like, kind of like put your toe in the pool kind of stuff. I mean, I guess I'll vote NDP if I have to, right? Like, that's the kind of spirit that's going on. If Jagmeet Singh was a white dude with a white name walking around talking the way that he is now, do you think that he would be like some third stringer 35-seat candidate? So the idea that Jagmeet Singh's going to stand up and get aggressive, how quick do you think it's going to be before the Sharia law crowd comes out? How fast do you think that's going to happen if Jagmeet Singh starts running aggressive ads, right? How long do you think it's going to take? And don't fucking fool yourself. The white supremacists standing up and saying, like, Jagmeet wants to do Sharia law and all that works. That works. That scares your centrist white liberals. That scares those guys just as badly as it scares your fascists, right? And they'll 100% be like, oh, well, if Jagmeet's going to do Sharia law, right? Even though that's all fucking nonsense and has nothing to do with Sikhism, but they don't care. They don't know. They don't get what Jagmeet is. They don't get what he is. Like they are at this moment literally just being like, oh yeah, I like Jagmeet because I am not a racist. Yes, he seems like a fine fellow for sure. Absolutely, yes. Will I vote for him? No, I'm not interested in voting for him. Like, so he's in this, like, rock and a hard place situation. Hey, Demand Better, how you doing? UBI more housing. They're already promising nearly unlimited investment on green stuff, but they could strengthen their targets even more. Yeah. No, I think that the NDP are the guys to support right now, for sure. If only to scare the shit out of these guys, right? If only to scare the shit out of these dumb idiots, right? Like, Aaron O'Toole and the Conservatives and the Liberals need to have the shit scared out of them. And, like, that to me is enough. Like, fuck these... Why are you voting these guys? Why would anyone continue to vote this way? Like, it's so bizarre. Like, it's bizarre at this point. Like, and it gives complete and total lie to the idea that, well, America, everything would be better if they had a third option. You know, if in America there was a third party, things would be better. Look at what's happening in Canada. Conservative liberal, 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 and that's going to keep happening right down to the fucking grave. Exactly. Never underestimate the power of humility to open doors you never saw. Yeah, my life has been more about, like, just smashing into walls until finally the wall falls over. That's been my life. Still waiting for Jagmeet and his team to do a campaign announcement on GLI and similar basic income supports for post-pandemic Canada. At this stage in the game, that's going to be the debates. I do think that both the Liberals and the NDP are waiting for the debates to have a big punch-up moment. I think that that's sort of the strategy at this point. Like, the Liberals have not run a campaign. Like, the campaign that they're running is embarrassing. It's the worst campaign I've ever seen. Like, they have no policies, they have no platform. They literally are playing catch-up to conservatives that are outflanking them on the left. Like, their campaign is an embarrassing shambles. So at this stage in the game, I think their hope is that we'll put Justin on the stage. Because Justin Trudeau does well in debates. He does. The reason he wins the first majority is because of his debates. Period. That it was between the NDP and the Liberals, and the populace was really looking at both of them, being like, which one of these two guys? And Trudeau came out swinging and knocked it out of the park, and Mulcair flubbed it badly, and so he snags his majority, and so their hope is to get him on the debate stage and have him do it again. But I think Justin Trudeau wants out. I think that Justin Trudeau wants out. I don't see him fighting. I think that he realizes how ineffective he is. That initially being the Prime Minister of Canada was great because he's like following in his father's footsteps. It's like this big family thing. And also, hey, I get to be the Prime Minister of Canada. But as time has moved forward, he's not only realized that it's actually quite difficult to do, but also he's not really up for the task. Like, he doesn't really want to do the job, right? That, like, he really just, in these last few years especially, has been reading cue cards. Like, he wants out. He doesn't want to be the Prime Minister of Canada. I don't see a guy that wants to be the Prime Minister of Canada. Do you? Like, do you see, like, if you think about Justin Trudeau and Aaron O'Toole and Jagmeet Singh as fighters, like MMA boxer fighters, right? Which of these guys has the energy? Which of these guys are looking like they want to get in there and they want to fight, right? Like, if I saw a fighter come to a fight looking the way like Justin Trudeau looks, I would really think to myself, like, this guy's going to concede pretty quick. Like, this fight's over. Like, and that happens in boxing and that happens in MMA, where a guy comes in and you can just see it. You're just like, yeah, this guy's not here to fight. He's not interested in this fight. You listen to him talk in the pre-fight interview, and you're just like, yeah, this dude's here to cash a check. Like, he's not really here to fight, you know? And meanwhile, the other guy, the champ, is sitting there being like, I'm going to kill this guy. I'm going to get in there. So, I don't see it. I just don't see it. Like, I think he wants out. Hi, DM. I don't think a tough brown man with a turban is the way to go right now, especially with Afghanistan going on. Most people don't know the difference between brown or Muslim. Yep. I know. Came so close with Jack Layton government 10 years ago. They got him with the cancer gun. Jack Layton would have been a PM in 2015, guaranteed. Jagmeet has stuff on Jagmeet has stuff on Justin now? What do you mean by that? Legacy banned straws. Exactly. Like, the Trudeau Liberals, like, they like, if I wanted to be nice to the Trudeau Liberals, and there does come a point where you do kind of have to look back and think to yourself, okay, what is the legacy, right? Marijuana legalization is real. They did do that. Like, it is sort of sad that, like, we had to legalize a plant, but here it is. The banning of straws, while it's fun to make fun of, and it is fun to make fun of, changing that type of plastic from usable to toxic, right? Because that's how it was classed. That's how they did this. They reclassified the plastic that is used to be a toxic material, and that actually does have profound effects on the conversation of climate change and how it happens. But my big complaint about the Liberals is very simply, like, they're just not doing it fast enough. Like, the things that they're doing are things that should be done, but can we get some fucking urgency here? Like, if they had done the ban straw thing, like back when they were when they were legalizing marijuana, I think people would have been like, yeah, awesome. But, like, the trouble with being the leader of a country is that there's always something else to do. There's always another thing to tackle. And I just think Justin Trudeau's no longer interested in tackling these things. I think that he sees that this next push is going to be very serious, right? And because the next push is the confrontation, that we no longer can afford to just, like, incrementally ban things and incrementally pick this up and incrementally do that and, like, pick things on the fringes. We are getting to the point where we need to confront the capitalists directly, right? And Jagmeet Singh standing up and saying he wants to remove subsidies on the fossil fuel industry, that's a confrontation, right? And Trudeau doesn't want to do it. Trudeau also doesn't want to confront the populace, right? Because that's the deal. You got to pick a side, right? You've either got to confront the capitalists or you've got to confront the populace. Aaron O'Toole wants to confront the populace and commit austerity. Jagmeet Singh wants to confront the capitalists and tax the wealthy. Pick a side Trudeau doesn't want to. He wants out. He doesn't want to pick a side. He doesn't have the spine for it, right? Like Donald Trump, he wants the power, not the job. Yeah. And in Trudeau's case, I just think that, like, he really just wanted to travel the world, it looked like. Right? Like, he really took advantage of the fact that he was, like, traveling the whole world. He got to wear all the costumes, right? Like, the photo album of him traveling the world and meeting with the world leaders is, like, one of the best photo albums ever. It really is. Like, he looked really great. Like, when Harper went around and did it, it was like the same, it might as well have been the same picture of him, right? Shaking hands, and just replace this person, right? When Trudeau went, he like put up, like, oh, you want me to wear that? Okay, the sari, like, oh, the traditional jacket. You want me to wear the head? Yeah, absolutely. He loved it. He loved it. He loved it. That's why ultimately I think Canadians forgave him for the Aladdin costume. You know what I mean? I don't think that we really forgave him for the blackface. I think that we still kind of have that in the back of our head. We're still like, oh, this dude was like doing straight up blackface, like when he was a kid in front of his school and like all that shit. Like that's pretty deep. Like that's pretty deep racism. But the Aladdin pictures, and if you don't know what I'm talking about with the Aladdin pictures, Justin Trudeau blackface. I'm sure everybody does, but it's worth bringing up, right? Like this one especially, right? Like that's a great costume, okay? This costume's great. And the truth about Justin Trudeau is that we know he loves costumes. We know he loves costumes. Every place he ever goes, he always puts on the costume. He wants to put on the costume. He literally is like, oh boy, we're going to Japan. I'm gonna wear a kimono. Like he loves it. He loves it. And I think we forgave him for this particular costume because it's very believable for me to see Justin Trudeau look at a mirror wearing just the costume without the makeup and just thinking like, there's something missing. There's something missing, right? And so he just commits to the bit. Of course, at the same time, like we've seen like, teachers dress up as Mr. T and so they put black makeup on and they get fired. So like the society has a really weird, I wonder if he's embarrassed now that he was working with a brown man wearing a turban, right? Like it's kind of an awkward situation. And these two men right here, somebody actually found them and actually talked to them and asked them, like, what did you think about that? And they both said, like, I don't know, he was in costume, he was committing to a bit, right? Okay. Like, they didn't seem too taken aback by it. They didn't think that it was done in a form of mockery, right? Like, that's the thing about blackface is that it's done to mock. It's done to make fun of a race. Whereas these guys were saying, like, we didn't feel like he was doing that to mock us. We felt like he wanted to be Aladdin and he wanted to commit to that bit, and so he did. And, like, I don't know, I feel like if the people who should be most offended by it are coming out and saying we weren't, then, I think Canadians kind of came to like, oh, okay. But the original, like, the Deo shit, where he's standing in front of his, like, school singing Deo in blackface, I think most people are like, nah, fuck that. Like, fuck that. Get out of here with that shit. I just think we want to forget about it. We just want to forget about it. We just want this to be, like, Trudeau wants it to be forgotten. He doesn't want people to remember, right? And I think most people have forgotten, right? And what's interesting, right, is that the Conservatives won't bring it up, right? The Conservatives won't bring up blackface because if they bring up blackface, it's going to open the door to people being like, hey, aren't you guys on, like, Parler and shit? Like, aren't you guys, like, giving money to literal racial purity cults? Aren't you guys, like, fucking white supremacists walking around saying Canada first and shit? Like, and the budget will balance itself. Oh. maybe he also sees that if he wins again, he'll be blamed for the burning of the planet that happened under his watch. I mean, there's a bit of that. Neoliberal politics is all about putting out fires, pure stimulus response, no vision, no goal. That's a really good point. Like, neoliberal politics is all about putting out fires, right? Like, literally say, chaos will reign, and then we have a government only to deal with the crises that come out of that chaos. Peter Pan, Justin, yeah. My problem is that I don't believe now is the time to balance anything. So, well, and look, this balance the budget is a slogan. Oh, okay, DM. Here, I'll do that. And then I know how much you guys love to hear me talk about the deficit. I bet DM is sitting there. DM is sitting there being like, "Oh shit, John's about to talk about the deficit." Hey John. You haven't sung your song yet. All right. So everybody thank DM for sparing you from my deficit grift rant that you're all familiar with by now. So if you've never heard this song, if you're sitting in there and you haven't actually heard this, I call this my Care Bear stare against neoliberal capitalism. If everybody in the world started to sing this song, there's fucking nothing the neoliberal capitalists could do about it. It is called Antarctica is Covered in Ice. Got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm old? I looked up at the crimson smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point of feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet, when death's sweet kiss comes and sweeps me off my feet. I hope by then we've learned a little more. I'd like to leave this place better than before, so everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice when everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I believe that we can do it. Because the solution to our problem is not about building something. It's not about creating something. It doesn't require much vision at all to understand that we are in a war with the earth itself, and it is a war that we will lose. We will lose badly. And if we want the war to end, all we have to do is stop. And when we stop, we will sit back and bear witness to the enormous power of the earth that we've been ignoring for so long, as it heals itself. That all of the damage that we have inflicted to the earth upon which we stand will be like a squalling child striking the face of his mother. This place was a garden before we got here. It will be a garden when we are gone. And if we want to be here to witness the majestic healing of the planet, all we have to do is stop. It's so fucking stupid. It's so fucking stupid. It's so goddamn stupid. Why can't we stop? Well, why can't a junkie stop doing heroin? We're addicted. We're addicted to the power. We're addicted to the power of our necromancy, which is what we're doing. That we are spending all of our time and all of our effort and everything we are doing in order to find pools of carbon, oil, which is compressed matter, compressed carbon, ground into the earth over millions of years. It is life. It is the bones of our ancestors that we exhume. The tar sands is a graveyard that we are exhuming. We are stripping the earth itself and turning it into the surface of the moon in order to extract from the stone the life essence of our ancestors so that we can manufacture through an alchemical process an elixir that we then pour into infernal machines forged from metal also extracted from the earth. And why? So that we can give ourselves superpowers, so that we can fly, so that we can travel long distances in a short period of time, so that we can create other forms of distractions and delights, toys, ways to amuse ourselves instead of focusing on anything going on in this plane of reality. And like Prometheus's gift of fire, the gift of oil comes with grand power. And this power is addictive. And we are seeing the people who have the most amount of wealth seek more and more ways to attain further and further superpowers. That Jeff Bezos shooting himself into space is a way for this man to attain a legendary status and a superpower. And this addiction to this type of power will be extremely difficult to wrest from the hands of people who complain that they have to wear masks. Because we've become so convinced that the most powerful force that exists in the world is me, or you, is the self. That I am the most powerful force on the earth. I am the one. Meanwhile, the earth will happily prove otherwise. It brought down the world economy with the flu +1. Now it is destroying the American population with the flu +2. Soon we will be facing the flu +3. And if we continue to ignore how fragile and small we are, if we refuse to humble ourselves before the power of the earth, we will face the plague again. We will face the plague again. The only time in human history population growth has declined was during the plague. And if we continue to fuck around, we will most certainly find out. SPARS virus is the flu +3, due out in 2025. Oh, wow. And here we are dicking around with neoliberal capitalism. Here we are dicking around with how do we get more numbers? This is the most blistering. Like, this is how deep the addiction is, right? That we have created a fake system of monetary capital, of financialization, that is literally just numbers from the air that are meaningless, that you literally could just like type into a computer or delete from a computer. And we fight wars over that. We destroy ourselves over that. And for what? Power has price. Yes, indeed it does. And I think the thing that people will be most interested in, or one of the things people will be most interested in looking back over this period of time, will be simply, what was that all about? Why did anyone do any of that at any point? Like, the Vietnam War. What was the point of that? The Cambodian War. The Korean War. What was the point of any of that? This is... What we are looking at is we are looking at a junkie. That the human species is a junkie that has become addicted to its own creations with oil, and has become addicted to the power that it gives them, and doesn't want to hear about the negative consequences of it, isn't really interested in dealing with the negative consequences of it. And the conversation surrounding the transition away from fossil fuels always contains in it a demand that we maintain the level of superpowers that we have now. That we can't just give up the superpowers. We can't just lay down the superpowers. That we must be able to maintain this level of superpower. Right? Certainly that must be the case. That Superman never gave away his powers. He never sacrificed his powers. He just used his power for good, says the junkie. And if it suddenly was found out that those superpowers were themselves the problem, well, what would Superman do? What should Superman do if the powers were themselves the problem? According to Western civilization, Superman should ignore that problem and just deal with the consequences as they unfold. According to me, Superman should give his powers up. And if you actually go ahead and you read your Bible, you know, like a good Christian should, if you've ever met one, which I doubt you have, you find out that sacrifice is a virtue. That one of the strongest things, one of the most virtuous things that a person can do for another person is sacrifice. And humanity will be faced with the reality of choosing between sacrificing its superpowers or dealing with the consequences of having them. And they will continue to delude themselves into believing that their superpowers are more impressive and powerful than the Earth itself. That's a battle that we will lose. That's a guarantee. We will never be stronger than the Earth. The only hope that we have to be stronger than the Earth is to destroy it, which of course destroys ourselves. So the best we'll ever be able to do is mutually assured destruction. We should stop. We should stop. It would be easy to do. That's the other thing. It'd be easy. We could certainly do that. Like, just stop? Oh, okay. And the guys that won't put pieces of cloth over their face will cry. There'll be protests. People will whine like little children because they're babies. And the Earth will move on. Which is the point. I love that song, man. I love that song. I love playing it. I love talking about it. I love what it brings out of me. I hope that you guys like it too. I hope that you like all of that. Yep. They would rather keep their superpowers in a hellish world than to give up the powers for a more peaceful and blissful place for everyone. That's a restatement of a classic John Milton phrase. John Milton created the story of the fall of the devil, right? That the story of the fall of the devil isn't actually a biblical story. But if you ask any Christian about it, they'll say that, no, that story's in the Bible. Nope. John Milton in Paradise Lost. He wrote it. He was a genius. John Milton was. And sorry, buddy. My guitar fell over. Sorry, buddy. Hit my dog. And John Milton said, he had the devil say, it is better to rule in hell than serve in heaven. I think that's exactly where we're at right now. I think that we've got a lot of people with a lot of power walking around saying, oh, if I have to give up this power, I would rather this place burn down. Yep. And maybe we'll have to fight. Like literally. Not like get out onto the streets and create protest movements and all of that. But there may come a time where it will come down to fighting. I don't see a way out for the United States. Like, I think the United States is going to fall into a fairly brutal civil war. Like, the place is awash in guns. The federal government has abandoned its own populace. Individual municipalities and states are attempting to resolve these issues, but all it really is going to take is some neo-fascist to get into power and start actively inflicting suffering on the populace instead of just this systemic abandonment. Well, power wealth should be seen as mental illness. Isn't it strange how, like, hoarding, if you hoard something in your apartment, like if back here there was a big pile of egg cartons, right, you guys would think that I had a mental illness. If back here was something even useful, right? Like, let's say back here I had a bunch of remote control cars. You guys would be thinking that I've got something going on, right? Something's going on up here. But if back here was a big pile of money, oh wow, what an entrepreneur. What a smart, intelligent man. And wealth accumulation, I mean, we've done these studies. I think it was the University of California, if I'm not mistaken. Like, let's actually show it. Studies about how wealth reduces. My spelling is terrible. Wealth reduces empathy. How wealth reduces. So, Scientific American, back in 2012. As riches grow, empathy for others seems to decline. Who is more likely to lie, cheat, and steal, the poor person or the rich one? It's tempting to think that the wealthier you are, the more likely you are to act fairly. After all, if you've already had enough for yourself, it's easier to think about what others may need. But research suggests the opposite is true. As people climb the social ladder, their compassionate feelings towards other people decline. Berkeley psychologists Paul Piff and Dasher Keltner ran several studies looking at whether social class influences how much we care about the feelings of others. In one study, Piff and his colleague discreetly observed the behavior of drivers at a busy four-way intersection. They found that luxury car drivers were more likely to cut off other motorists instead of waiting for their turn in the intersection. This is true for both men and women, upper-class drivers, regardless of the time of day or amount of traffic at the intersection. In a different study, they found that luxury car drivers were also more likely to speed past a pedestrian trying to use a crosswalk, even after making eye contact with the pedestrian. And on it goes, right? We've done the studies. We know. Like, by any measure, like, if it wasn't true that wealth decreased compassion and empathy, then the results would be inconsistent. But they're not inconsistent. Anytime you run the study And there have been studies that were done where they created a game, right? They created a game that was obviously rigged in the favor of one of the players. And that player, the losers of the game, of course, would say, well, the game was rigged, right? But the winner of the game, who the game was rigged in favor of, would argue that it was his strategic mind that allowed him to win. It wasn't that the game was rigged, even though it was obviously rigged. And so wealth and power is a form of mental illness. It alters the way that a person acts in the world in real and significant and measurable ways. You can observably track them. You can scientifically discover. Given the growing wealth income inequality in the United States, the relationship between wealth and compassion has important implications. Those who hold most of the power in this country, political and otherwise, tend to come from privileged backgrounds. If social class influences how much we care about others, then the most powerful among us may be the least likely to make decisions that help the needy and the poor. They may also be the most likely to engage in unethical behavior. Keltner and Piff recently speculated in the New York Times about how their research helps explain why Goldman Sachs and other high-powered financial corporations are breeding grounds for greedy behavior. Although greed is a universal human emotion, it may have the strongest pull over those who already have the most. This is coming out of Scientific American. This isn't like the Christian Gospel Times or something, right? This isn't like a moral or ethical paper. This is Scientific American. Only sociopaths pursue power and wealth and succeed. They become divorced from the masses. It's both a cause and effect. Hey, Victini, how you doing? Well, and I mean, have you noticed how our culture has begun to venerate and empathize with sociopaths? That sociopaths are actually becoming our protagonists in many cases? Have you noticed how there's this tendency to rehabilitate the villains of our childhoods and of our past, right? Cruella de Vil gets rehabilitated. Maleficent gets rehabilitated. The villains through and it isn't even a rehabilitation through journey, right? I actually wrote a script because I was fascinated with the concept of this rehabilitation of villains in the past. And so I wrote a script to rehabilitate Jafar, right? But instead of retconning it, right, which is how they've done it, right, that they go into the past of these, they go into the history of these people, and instead of telling the story as it happened, and then them seeking some kind of rehabilitation after the fact, they just retcon it. It's just revisionism, right? It's just revisionism. Whereas I wrote a script about Jafar that takes his history and then continues it forward. Because if we remember, he ends the story as a genie in the lamp. And there's a big story to get him from the evil villain Jafar to becoming a compassionate, empathetic person. How does one achieve that? What's the path? The cult of personality surrounding Elon Musk. Yeah, the cult of personality surrounding Elon Musk is well cultivated too. That's what's fascinating to me about Elon Musk. Like, what does he give a fuck if people think he's smart or not? Right? Like, that's what's most interesting to me about Elon Musk, is that he's clearly spent a lot of money to try to persuade people into believing that he's actually smart, when it doesn't take very long to find out that this guy's just sort of a normal dude, right? Like, he's not dumb, right? He isn't an idiot, but he's not smart, right? You don't have to be very smart to take your money and buy titles the way he has, right? Like, he didn't invent anything. He just bought the right to be called the inventor of things and the founder of things, right? Like, it doesn't take a lot of brain power to figure out how to do that. And, like, he's never invented anything. He's never created anything. He has some, like, programming skills, sure. But, like, so that makes him as smart as a normal programmer. The truth about Elon Musk is that he is the son of a emerald miner in apartheid South Africa. His wealth was literally accrued by slave labor in emerald mines during apartheid South Africa. Like, that's where his money came from. It's not something to be venerated. It's not something to be worshipped. And then Elon Musk himself, his claim to fame is that he made PayPal. So his apartheid emerald mining father said, hey, what would be useful is if me and my billionaire buddies could have a way to pay for things over the internet. And so his son made it. Like, it doesn't take a genius to do these things. It doesn't take a genius to do what you're told by your dad, right? Like, so, but what's interesting to me about Elon Musk is that he needs people to see him as smart. Because I think he's actually got some pretty serious daddy issues, right? It's not difficult to imagine that a man who literally enslaved people in emerald mines for his own wealth probably didn't have a lot of compassion and empathy, probably didn't give a lot of love to his own son. Doesn't take a genius to figure this out. And so for me, I take a look at Elon Musk and I just see a man who's trying very hard to get to a place where he thinks that his daddy will finally be proud of him. Like, unrelated, but Joe Rogan has COVID and is taking ivermectin. Joe Rogan's decline into insanity has been startling to watch. He's become indefensible. I used to defend Joe Rogan. I used to because I like him as a dude. I think that Joe Rogan as a dude, he's just like a dude. But something really changed when he moved over into Spotify territory. Something really, really changed, and he became a very different person. And it's suddenly. And I think it has a lot to do with what we're talking about here. He was given $100 million to go over to Spotify. Like, there's this reduction in his empathy and a reduction in his intelligence that has happened because of this. And like, for goodness sakes, like, Rogan recently platformed like an outright North Korean propagandist, right? Like this, what's her name? Youngmi Park or something, where like literally nobody thinks that she's credible. Like, nobody thinks that she's credible. Even the people who are on her side. Even the people who are like, North Korea is an evil dictatorship and it's evil and it tortures people and oh my god, what a hellscape North Korea is. Even they are just like, yeah, but don't listen to her. Like, she's so inconsistent. Her story keeps changing, right? She's completely disingenuous. And Joe Rogan platforms her. Like, you're not doing that because, oh, she's an interesting person who has controversial kind of, you're doing that because you want to propagandize somebody. I think Joe Rogan is working pretty closely with the CIA as well. He keeps bringing on Mike Baker, who is obviously a CIA asset. Like, he's what they call former CIA, which there's no such thing as former CIA. You're always CIA. And now that, like, Joe Rogan, like, and when COVID was happening, like, Joe Rogan has been one of the biggest propagators of anti-COVID hysteria, right? Like, I remember he had Jimmy Dore on. This is also really telling about Joe Rogan. So Joe Rogan has Jimmy Dore on, and Jimmy Dore, for about an hour and a half, goes on an anti-imperialist rant, right, against both the Trump administration as well as the Biden administration, right? Jimmy Dore's very well-read, or he knows what's going on throughout the Middle East, and he's very anti-imperialist. But they have a 5-minute conversation about COVID, where Jimmy Dore is talking about the effects that the vaccine had on him and all that kind of stuff. Well, what do you think Joe Rogan clipped? Do you think Joe Rogan clipped any of that anti-imperialist talk, or do you think he clipped the 5 minutes where he was talking about COVID? So he used the 5-minute clip so he doesn't have to platform anti-imperial talk. He did the same thing to Abby Martin. He has Abby Martin on his show, right? One of the big critiques that you should levy at Joe Rogan is that he has far more right-wingers on than he has leftists on. And then when he has a leftist on, instead of using the clip of them actually talking about something serious. With Abby Martin, they were talking about aliens. So he has a 3-hour conversation with anti-imperialist war correspondent Abby Martin, and instead of platforming any of the conversation that she had about Israel, any of the conversation that she's having about what's going on in the Middle East, no, it's aliens. We talked aliens with Abby Martin. So Joe Rogan, in my view, has become kind of detached. Like he's not too much different than Bill Maher to me now. That I kind of think that, like, at first he was just like a dude who was interested in interesting conversations and all of this, but steadily he's just been bought, and the CIA has gotten involved, and there are obvious narratives that he is there to propagate, right? The narrative of individualism. I mean, we all get what we deserve. We call the inherited indoctrination and exploitation and exclusive networking soft skills. Yeah. Do you know how to manipulate people? Soft skills. Yeah, it really is becoming socialism or barbarism in real time. And it is without a doubt. The United States is roundly rejecting socialism. Like, it's roundly rejecting it, right? They are choosing barbarism, and they're choosing it. Like, it's a distinct choice that they are looking at. Because, like, put on a mask. No. Okay. Like, that's a choice, right? Put on a mask, protect yourself and others from a virus that is going around. Get the vaccine, right? No. Okay. So it's barbarism. And it's very, very difficult for me to believe that the United States doesn't fall into some kind of civil war. The George Floyd protests were the precursor. Like, the amount of property destruction, the amount of destruction that occurred because of the George Floyd protests. And the Joe Rogans of the world are walking around being like, oh yeah, and then we'll build and we'll rebuild and you know, those cities will come back and everything will be great. None of that is going to happen. None of that is going to happen, right? Because what is happening in the society, and you can see this very clearly, is that you have one section of the society, right? You have one section of the society that has all of the wealth and are buying up all of the property, and then the other section of the society is too poor to live in the area where the rich people are, and so the businesses and all of the services can't find workers. And so the capitalist system stops working. Becoming detached? No, I take your point. Well, and in truth, like, my greatest, like, I really started to lose respect for Joe Rogan through his struggle with the trans conversation. That he was presenting himself as being like, no, trans people are fine, and like, that's all great and all, but here's my concerns, and like, all of this. And it's like, okay, good, great Joe Rogan. Why are you not platforming a trans activist? There are trans activists that live in your culture, in your state, in your city. That is a truism. It is certainly the case that there are trans rights activists who will come on your show and talk to you directly, face to face, about being a trans person in America, about the struggles that they face. You can ask them the questions you have and listen to their responses. He has yet to do so. I don't think you get to wade into such a controversial issue and platform radical far-right voices, ignorant, arrogant, stupid people, literally the morons in the society talking about trans issues, without platforming a trans right activist and call yourself credible. In my view, Joe Rogan discredited himself completely with that conversation and outed himself entirely as a transphobe, which he is. He's 100% a transphobe. Like, he wants to stand there and be like, oh, but I love trans. No, I'm completely fine with transphobe. Then platform one. He's not going to do that, right? He's not going to do that. He himself is a massive transphobe, and it's obvious, right? Just look at the people he's brought on to talk about the issue. Look at the conversations he has with people. And then ultimately, the nail in the coffin is that he refuses to actually bring somebody on to challenge his own views. So not only is he a transphobe, but he's also intellectually and morally weak. Like, you're refusing to actually bring somebody on to challenge your view, you're weak. And that was always Joe Rogan's big pitch, was that, oh, I'll bring this guy on, and then I'll bring this guy on to have my views challenged. Well, unless they're trans. And if he's got that kind of weakness in the way that he thinks about the world and his moral abilities, where else is he weak? What else has he been peddling that is just moral weakness, right? And I mean, like, his views on individualism and his views on, like, free will and all this kind of stuff reveals a kind of moral weakness and an inability to actually be confronted with reality and grow. Like, if you want to listen to somebody just fart around, fine. But that's not how people are treating Rogan. People are treating Rogan like he's an intellectual of some kind. Today we're going to be platforming bigots because I am fair and unbiased. Exactly. Well, but hold on, Mock. Like, today we're going to be platforming bigots because I'm fair and unbiased. But, like, where's the other guy? Like, where's the other guy? Right? Or gal. Or whatever. Right? But where are they? They just don't exist in the conversation as far as Joe Rogan's concerned. America balkanizes in 10 years. Yeah, could be the case. Could be the case. It's extremely unlikely that the federal government will survive much longer. Like, the Americans are paying taxes, for God's sakes, and they're getting nothing. Like, they're getting literally nothing. And the things that they are getting are national embarrassments. Like, the Afghanistan war, $2 trillion into the Afghanistan war, people paid for that, right? People are paying taxes for that. That's coming off of their pay. They see it come off of their pay. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos is shooting rockets into space, right? That doesn't survive. That doesn't last long. Have you read Neil Stephenson's The Fall or Dodge in Hell? No, I have not. Ameristan is a subplot. Joe Rogan comes off as an ANCAP to me. I don't know if Joe Rogan is just, he has a lot of money and he's just happy to have it. He wants to have it. And, like, he has, and I think it's because of his Catholic upbringing, but he does espouse an idea of egalitarianism. He does, like, hope that people do well, but he's not going to, like, promote the idea that, like, hey, maybe we should not have all this money. Where they prohibit mixing even fabric in clothing. Oh my God. Ugh. Absolutely 4chan ANCAP. Over half our tax dollars here in the U.S. go to the military. Yeah. It's completely unsustainable. Like, people are starting to wake up and be like, hey, like, I'm paying a lot in taxes, and I'm not getting anything for it. Like, what do you get in America? Like, what do you actually get? I'm not asking that rhetorically. Can anybody tell me in the chat, what do you actually get for your taxes? Like, near as I can tell, you get a police force that beats the shit out of you. You get a military that murders people overseas. And a big old middle finger. Like, how much longer do you think Americans are going to tolerate that? Like, and that's just the taxpayers. Like, forget about the abandoned people who live in the streets. And so it's very difficult for me to believe that, like, here, what's America polling as I suck at spelling this word. No, Congress and the public. I had this great poll recently. Oh, I'm looking up session. How do you spell secession? See, I told you that I was going to be terror secession. Is that right? Here you go. Nope. Anyway, there's a poll that was done throughout the United States, and most people want, not most people, but like between 30 and 40%, upwards of 66% in some areas, want to secede from the Union, right? That you're looking at places like... Is that what it is? See, I knew it. I knew I was just messing everything up. I get to embarrass myself in front of all you guys. Here you go. Shocking poll finds many Americans now want to secede from the United States. Overall, 37% of respondents indicated a willingness to secede. That's an enormous number. And as we go down, do they have the actual chart? There are places here. If I click on this, is it going to actually take me to the place? Because there's a map. Is this so like expert Democrat Republican? Nope. We're getting fucked around. We're getting fucked around. Come on, show me the map. Show me. But you can see. Here we go. I knew it. Okay. Support for secession from the United States to join new regional unions. Okay. Red is Republican, purple is independent, blue is Democrat. So if you're in the southern states, 66% of Republicans want to secede. 66% of Republicans would like secession. 50% of independents would like secession. Only 20% of Democrats, but since when have they mattered in the southern states in the first place? You go on over here into the Pacific, 47% of Democrats want to secede. 33% independent, 27% Republican. The mountain regions are about even with 35% independent, 53% Republican, only 17%. But if you go into the Northeast, you're looking at 39%, 35%, 26%. It is very, very easy for me to believe that a candidate could run on a platform of secession and succeed. We saw Brexit happen, right? Secession is on the table. And as long as this continues to happen, where all of these places are paying tons of money for fucking nothing, and in many places people are beginning to see that their tax money is being used not only to achieve nothing, but to destroy their own communities through police violence and police force. It's just a matter of time. It goes to maintain a system where young adults join the U.S. military to kill people so they can go to college, and so your grandparents have to choose between medicine and groceries for the week. Yeah. And there are very prescient arguments that say that the reason why we don't see the Americans passing a universal health care bill, some kind of student debt relief bill, something like this, is because the only institutions that are available that offer those things to American kids is the military. So if you offer these things to people, they'll be less willing to join the military. And that's the entire purpose of the federal government, is to inflict itself in the world through its military force. So you can't live in a stable, just society because you gotta funnel your kids into a death machine. That's what it is. Here in the US, independent includes libertarian, just FYI. Yeah. The libertarians are a weird bunch, if you ask me. Libertarianism is I think you gotta be kind of a psycho to think that libertarianism works. Any system that just poverty guarantees citizenship, but like, it's just more of the let chaos reign. Just like, yeah, let the powerful destroy the weak. Like, it's very straightforward. And most libertarians just don't have any actual understanding of monopolization and how monopolies actually work. Hey Miranda, how you doing? Good to see you. Everyone in chat, Miranda is a good friend of mine, so be extra nice to her. Sad fact, there's a study that shows 61% of bankruptcies in the USA are from medical debt. Yep. It's disgusting. You don't live in a society, you live in a business. Right? This is something that like is starting to gain traction and people are starting to see it. I believe there was a Brad Pitt movie where he said as much, that this isn't a society, it's a business. But it's absolutely, I'm sorry to hear that, Bubble Guppy. I have a student debt bankruptcy. Here in Canada, we're allowed to bankrupt out of student debt after 7 years. So I carried 7 years of student loan debt around with me until I finally just threw up my hands and declared a bankruptcy to get out of the student debt. Yep, you've got a medical bankruptcy in your past. Yep, student debt for me. And like, the system of debt that exists in North America is a disgrace. It's disgraceful. Like, what kind of society plunges its own children into debt? Oh, well, that's nice to hear, Miranda. Thank you so much for popping in. We're in a very strange moment right now where everyone is so upset with these liberals that they're swinging conservative. And I hope that that's just being done out of a grumbling, like, I hope that it's just a temper tantrum. I hope that we can actually sit these people down and say, like, okay, but, like, who's actually offering something? Right? Who's actually, like, trying to improve the society? It's not the fucking conservatives. It's not the fucking conservatives. Ugh. But apparently we need to put the fork into the socket to really find out, oh, that hurts. Apparently that's what we have to do. Can I put something on for just a minute here? Go get some water. Do I have something primed and ready to go? I don't. So, you know what, guys? I hate to do this to you, but I need to go grab some water. So you guys get chair stream. Chair stream. Chair stream. You get to look at that chair. Chair stream. Chair stream. What streamer would dare to stream his chair? To stream his chair. No one compares. No one compares. No one compares to chairs. That's my chair song. Landlords don't need handouts. They need dignity of work. Keep your rent. Your landlord will thank you later when they break the cycle of dependence. Yep. Premier Kenny expected to keep a low profile through federal election to frustrate Trudeau. Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting how in the middle of an election, the Conservatives tell all of the Conservative leaders to just lay low, don't talk, right? Don't be part of the conversation. Isn't it weird how you would expect Conservatives to lift up their leaders as examples of what Conservative leadership looks like? Isn't it weird how the federal Conservatives have literally no one they're willing to look to and say what a great leader they are and what great things they've done for Canada? Isn't it weird how the strategy for the Conservatives is to have all of their leaders lay low and not be part of the conversation? Don't you think that's a little strange, right? Don't you think that's a bit concerning? Hi, vey. It's almost like people with tons of capital benefit from running the economy into a huge recession every decade or two so they can buy up assets on the cheap and consolidate even more wealth into a small number of hands. Oh yeah, it's almost like that's exactly what's happening. I'm not real. Oh yeah, this is great. I'm not really into politics. Anyway, let me tell you how much I hate my job, my boss, my landlord, my shitty health insurance, my student loans, my town's public transportation, and the fact that I've come home too tired to do anything after work every day. Yep. Not really into politics, though. I cannot stress enough, especially now that you're here, Miranda, I cannot stress enough how much of a disaster a conservative government would be for Canada. It would be a complete and total fucking disaster for Canada to have a majority government right now, based on climate change alone. Like, forget about the mass austerity that they're obviously going to commit. Forget about the fact that, like, they're absolutely going to dismantle our healthcare system. Forget about the fact that privatization is already on the table, that they're being very open about that. But, like, you have right-wing pundits like Andrew Coyne saying that the Conservatives' climate change platform is a failure. You literally have other conservatives saying of the Conservative climate change platform that it fails. You just need to take a look at, like, climate plans of the four major parties. This is UBC professor Catherine Harrison. Like, I don't understand why people are like, fossil fuel subsidies. The Conservatives want to increase fossil fuel subsidies. Like, that is a failure. That is like saying, hey dude, you need to do less heroin, and the guy says, okay, best I can do is do more heroin. Like, how seriously are you going to take this? How seriously are you going to take this? And we got some, like, big-time grifting going on here, man. Like, we got some big-time grifting happening here. And, like, my absolute favorite is the idea that that O'Toole and the Conservatives are going around being like, we're going to take care of puppies. Yeah, we're going to take care of animals. It's like literally like, let's kiss a baby, and that means I care about babies. Like, they're going to hold up these shields, right? Like, that the Conservatives are actually going to raise the amount of support given to disabled people, but they're just going to hold it up as a shield while they use a sword called austerity and just lay waste to the entire population. And if we're gullible rubes, we'll just let them do it. And I mean, and it's a considerable threat. Like, you can take a look at the polling data here. Like, right now, if the Conservatives are in a minority government, if the election was held today, and they only need, 25 more seats? So they only need 25 more seats, right? And they're a majority government. And that means they can do what they want. That's an enormous threat for Canada. An enormous threat. We saw what Ford did. We saw what Kenny's done. We've seen it all. Yeah. What do you think a good strategy to increase home ownership for the younger generations? I'm always stuck about what a solution actually is. Okay, Miranda, let's go. Let's go deep. So, none of what any of these politicians are saying is a solution, right? The problem that we are facing is that billionaires and millionaires are buying up our housing market and treating it like a speculative casino. That's the problem. If you don't... Oh, excuse me. That's fun. If you don't understand what the problem actually is, then you don't know what the solutions actually are. The problem is that millionaires and billionaires are buying up properties, hoarding them for themselves. There's 66,000 empty units in Toronto alone that are just sitting empty, right? The idea that we will just build more housing and, it's supply and demand, John, just build more housing and that will lower the prices. When you have billionaires and millionaires in the market, right? When you have billionaires and millionaires in the market, you can build as much housing as you want. They're going to buy it, right? Why? Because they have billions of dollars, right? And why are they buying these properties? Because they know that the economy is collapsing. How do they know the economy is collapsing? Because they're the ones collapsing it, right? They're the you've got major hedge funds like Vanguard, Blackguard, Citadel, right? These guys are shorting the market. They're not shorting a stock in the market, they're shorting the entire market. The expectation of the hedge funds, i.e. the guys that run the market, is that the market will collapse, which is why they are betting against it. So what do you want to have if the market collapses, right? You want to have hard assets. What are hard assets? Land, water, resources. This is what you want to have access to if your market collapses. You don't want a lot of liquidity. You don't want a lot of just like shit that can just vanish. You don't want to be tied to currency markets or anything like that. So what do? You buy housing, right? They don't care about renting this shit out. They don't care about reselling it. When the market collapses, they want to have the item. They want to have the housing. And so the solution to this isn't to just build more housing or rezone or any of this kind of childish nonsense that doesn't actually understand what the problem is. The actual solution is to say, you have an empty property, you have 1 month to fill it or we take it. Use it or lose it. And when they cry like, oh, but the free market, their free market is worthless. It is just a shield that they are using to protect their sociopathic nature. You have empty property, use it or lose it, right? And many of them will lose it because they can't actually turn around and do anything with it, right? The idea of having a housing market in the first place is kind of abhorrent to me. The idea that, oh, it's fine to throw people into homelessness and out onto the streets because some billionaire needs a 10th property. No. No. The true solution to the problem is for the society to grow up, become an adult, nationalize these housing, create a crown corporation, take empty properties away from these childish billionaires, give them to people who need housing. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. It's time to grow up and be an adult. And if people are walking around saying like, no, neoliberal capitalism can solve this problem, they are little baby children who need to be moved out of the conversation completely. Because we need adults in the conversation. And unfortunately, while we are dealing with a period of time where we need adults to be in charge, we've got fucking conservatives. The most childish among us. Unbelievable. Because we're not going to solve this with market principles. We're not. That is not going to work. And really, if you want to ask me what the true solution to all of this is, we got to get rid of these billionaires. We got to get rid of these billionaires. The billionaires are the biggest problem that we are facing. If you were to create a Venn diagram of all of the problems that are happening in Canada, dead center right in the middle of all of those of everything you put in that diagram, billionaires. So if you want to solve a lot of problems in the society, the linchpin that you need to pull is billionaires. And who's the only party that's actually saying, hey, let's tax these guys? My view, we need to tax them out of existence. That it should not be possible for there to be a billionaire. Billionaires are an enormous problem. They cause nothing but problems in the society, even if they are benevolent, even if you have some idea of a good billionaire. The truth is that a billionaire cannot be responsive to the needs of the populace, and a society will always restructure itself in order to pay fealty to that billionaire simply because they exist. Get rid of them, tax away their wealth, and the only party that's even beginning to talk this way are the NDP, and the NDP can't get votes. Yep. My fiance has depression because he's done everything society told him. He went to school, he works hard, he saved every dollar, and owning a home here is still out of reach for us. Yep. That's become a common refrain now. And people are starting to form protest movements. I see people. I'm part of a group that is forming protest movements because they can't get access to housing, right? But their solutions are completely detached from reality. These guys are saying like, oh, you just need to rezone, or oh, you just need to build more housing, or oh, you just need to do any of that kind of stuff. None of that works. None of that works. because there are billionaires. That if you genuinely want to get that house, and like you're touching on, and your lived experience now, Miranda, is touching on something I've been saying for years and years. Capitalists destroy themselves, right? Capitalism is a system that destroys itself, and it destroys itself. First, it destroyed the homeless, right? The very poor. Let's actually be really, really clear. First, it destroyed minority groups, right? It enslaves the black population, and it just commits a genocide against the First Nations people, right? And all of the white folk say, "Oh, this is fine. We're creating a better life for these guys," right? Then the capitalists begin to destroy the homeless and the poor that it abandons, right? So it begins by destroying minority groups, and then it starts destroying their own poor, right? And then it starts pulling it back further and further. It decimates the middle class, right? By shipping out all the manufacturing, laying waste to what used to be the middle class that no longer exists, right? Gone is that idea. So for 50% of the society has been full-scale abandonment already, and now the abandonment is coming for people like yourself and your fiance, right? People who did everything right, who made all the right decisions, who did everything they were told, who worked hard, who got the right job, got the right education, did everything correct, and now capitalism is abandoning you too, right? First it'll be your house, right? First it'll be your housing. Next is your commodities, right? Things like food will become more difficult to get access to, especially as climate change begins to rear its head and the famines begin, right? And people like yourself are going to experience a tightening and a tightening and a tightening and a tightening, and you'll see it happening in real time, year by year, in your own life. Things will get tighter. It'll be harder to get stuff. You'll no longer be able to get automobiles. You'll no longer be able to get access to certain services, right? Tighten and tighten and tighten. And while you're experiencing that tightening, the rest of us have already been long abandoned. Long abandoned. And the capitalists will steadily just like abandon and abandon and abandon. And as that tightening begins, the super wealthy, the millionaires and the billionaires, will retreat into their gated communities, right? Create a little society amongst themselves, and everything outside of that gated community, right, will be protected. They'll be protected from it by police, who will be on the inside of the gate, and who they will send out into the world. This is the future of our society, in as such as we have a society, because this is actually a business. It's not a society. It's just a business. And and there are ways to stop it. And the great irony of this election that we're going through is that the one party that's standing up with the actual solution, tax the wealth, right? Tax the wealth away, get rid of these fucking billionaires, right? They're the ones that can't actually get any votes. Because ultimately their leader is a brown guy with a big beard wearing a turban. And people won't vote for it. That if Jagmeet Singh was walking around and his name was Jason Singer and he was some white dude, I think he would be very popular. People would really be swinging his way. But he's not. So we won't. Ugh. And there's a reason why America. I think, Victini, you said it earlier, right? America balkanizes probably in the next 10 years, like, if not 10, certainly within the next 20, if this trajectory continues. Like, the citizens will not tolerate this level of abandonment for very long. So right now, the conservatives have 33.8% support. So you've probably kicked up into hysteria town. Let's take you back down just a second. The trajectory of how this has all looked, right, is that the liberals wanted to get their majority. They have dropped significantly. 170 seats is majority. So 145 is a minority. That means that to get any legislation passed through the House, the Conservatives would still need to negotiate with the NDP, with the Liberals, or some coalition of like Bloc Québécois, Green, and certain NDP seats, right? But really, the most likely candidates are the NDP or the Liberals moving forward. That's where we're at right now. It looks like, let me take you into proper polling. It looks like the Conservatives have sort of plateaued, right? Each one of these dots represents a poll, right? The line, as you can see, for the Conservatives has gone up, but now you can start to see it's sort of peppering back down. And my perspective of what has happened there is that Canadians are upset with the Liberals. The Liberals are not really running. They're running the worst campaign I've ever seen, right? I've never seen a campaign worse than the ones the Liberals are running, right? And I include like Thomas Mulcair's campaign in that this campaign is really, 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 really bad. And also Canadians are upset that there's an election at all, right? Which is actually really funny. I'm going to do this bit for you. I'm so happy that I get to do this for you, Miranda. This is my favorite bit. So Canadians on the lead up to this election all said that, you know what, I'm fine. I'm fine if there's an election. I don't really want there to be an election, but if there's an election, I'm fine. You know, I'm fine. Yeah, you know, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine with there being an election. And the Liberals were like, oh, okay, you're fine? You're fine if there's an election? Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Well, then let's have an election. And the Canadians were immediately like, an election? Oh, I don't want to have an election. An election in the middle of it. I don't want an election. You Liberals, I'm voting Conservative. And that's 100% what's happened. So we're through that now, I think. We're through that now. Canadians had their little temper tantrum. They all said, I'm going to vote Conservative. And now people are starting to remind people about who the Conservatives actually are. And this line has kind of plateaued a little bit, right? So the Conservatives jumped up a little bit. It's plateaued, right? And that's where we're at right now. I suspect, fingers crossed, because you can kind of see there's an uptick here on the NDP, right? The NDP have had some polls where they've gone up a little bit. If more polls start to do this line for the NDP can start to climb. The Conservatives can plateau, right? Maybe decline a little bit, right? It's I actually think it's unlikely. I shouldn't say this out loud because it's going to curse things. So I won't. But as it stands right now, if an election were held today, oh, look at that. They just updated it. Yep, they just updated it. Last update, September 1st, rather. You can see, look at that. NDP has already gone up a little bit. Conservatives gone down a little tiny bit. Liberals also down, right? So things are fluid. Election season is very fluid. Things are more fluid in election season than they are the rest of the year because Canadians are fickle, can have their minds changed, often do change their minds, and given the volatility of this particular election, you should expect to see that reflected in the polls. And that's exactly what's happened. So hopefully, fingers crossed, hopefully Canadians will come down from the high of shitting on these Liberals, right? And just saying, I'm going to vote Conservative, right? With the kind of bluster that you sort of expect from a deceived and betrayed populace, a disillusioned populace, as the populace very much is. And you can see it's reasonable to believe that the populace can be talked down from this emotional state by very simple statements of like, okay, don't you want to vote for the guy that's offering you something? Don't you want to vote for the guy that's actually saying, hey, 92% of Canadians want a tax on the wealthy, Jagmeet Singh is offering that. 92% of Canadians don't want to see austerity done against the populace. Jagmeet Singh is offering that, right? Most Canadians want to see some form of supports for the lower classes. Jagmeet Singh is offering that. What are the Conservatives actually offering? And the more... This is what I do, Miranda. This is what I do. Tune in. This is what I do. I open with this kind of shit. I really am just kind of going over this for your benefit, Miranda. And I'm also going to be I'll be showing the debates. So on September 9th, the debate, I'll do my regular show, and then the debates happen right after, and I'm going to show the debates because the debates are going to be super clutch. The debates are going to be super clutch for everybody. Literally every party is really, really banking on the debates to shore everything up and shore up all of this kind of stuff. If you are able to tune in right at the top, right at 6 o'clock, I go over election stuff basically immediately. It's the first thing that I do. Yeah, here in the U.S., nobody votes for anyone. We vote against that awful other party. Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. Like the politics of the United States is very, very divisive. It's very divisive, and that's done on purpose. It's very divisive, and it's done on purpose, because what the wealthy class, the sociopath class, never wants Americans to realize is that the true battle is not between Republican and Democrat. The true battle is between the rich and the poor, and that many of the people in the Republican Party actually have aligned interest in what is happening with the Democrats. So what you have to do is you have to demonize Trump supporters, right? And the Trump supporters need to demonize Biden supporters so that these guys can never actually talk to one another and realize that they actually have a lot in common. That the concerns that Trump supporters and Biden supporters have are very similar. Because if they start to do that, they may actually align along those lines. And if a third party were to appear and those people were to go from the Democrats and the Republicans and form another party, that could be a major, major concern in U.S. politics. So it's very, 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 very important to create cults of personality so that you can never penetrate deep enough to actually get into the issues and find commonality with one another, which you certainly would. That if the Republican supporters and the Democrat supporters actually talk to one another on class issues and along class lines, they would find that they have enormous connections with one another. It's exactly what happened with the Occupy movement, that the encampments had to get cleared because the occupiers and the Tea Partiers were beginning to put two and two together. That the Tea Partiers were saying, we think government is the problem, right? The Tea Partiers stood up and said, we think the government is the problem. Classic Reagan, right? Government is the problem. The occupiers were saying, corporations are the problem, right? And very steadily, it was the occupiers that figured it out first, that put two and two together first, and they started to talk to the Tea Partiers, and not just like, oh, we'll get elected and then we'll have a conversation in Congress or whatever. They were beginning to talk to one another in the streets. Occupiers were going to Tea Party rallies and they were talking to Tea Party people. Tea Party people were going to the encampments and were talking with occupiers, and they were beginning to put together that the problem is not just corporations. The problem is not just government. It is the merger between corporations and government that is the problem. And if the occupiers and the Tea Partiers came together and came to an understanding that that was the problem, the game would be over. The game would be over, right? That to fix a problem, you have to find out what the problem is first. And the wealthiest people in the society, right? The real wealth, I'm not talking about Elon Musk or Gates or any of these guys. the actual wealth in the society understands that the smartest tactic to follow is to just make sure you're invisible, right? If they don't even know you exist, then they don't know who to fight. That if it comes down to fisticuffs, if it comes down to pitchforks and torches and people storming the balustrades and all this kind of stuff, well, if they don't know you exist, they don't know where to find you. And I'm talking very explicitly about the Rothschilds, the Morgans, the Rockefellers, right? Nobody knows these guys. Nobody knows about them, right? Because these guys own the money supply. They don't care how much money somebody has, right? They don't care. Like Elon Musk has $100 billion. Okay. Would you rather have a large sum of money, or would you rather own the money supply? And for those of you who don't know exactly what I'm talking about, the Federal Reserve that exists in the United States, that's responsible for printing and maintaining the value of the currency, is a private institution that's owned by private banks such as the Rockefellers, such as the Rothschilds, such as the Morgans. And those are families, right? And and so if the United States was to fall into civil war and fall into some kind of disrepair, well, those families would just disappear. They would just fade into the background, right? And people will start storming the Gates Foundation or whatever. I have no idea why these billionaires think it's a good idea to be popular. I've never understood that. I don't understand why these billionaires, like, why does Buffett think it's a good idea that everybody knows that he's an astute businessman? It's got to be just a form of narcissism, right? A much, like David Thompson here in Canada is a genius at this, right? Don't let people know you exist. Why would you ever want anybody to know you exist? David Thompson's the wealthiest Canadian. His wealth went up by like 40% over the pandemic. His entire strategy is to just own about 10% of everything, right? He owns about 10% of everything in Canada. He doesn't own anything. He just owns 10% of everything. So that if this institution collapses, well, that's not a big deal, right? And if this one takes off, it's like, okay, great, right? And but nobody knows he exists. He's literally a monarch. His official title is the Third Baron of Fleet, recognized by the Canadian government. He inherited billions of dollars from his father, who inherited billions of dollars from his father. He's literally fourth generation monarchy living here in Canada. But John, I thought it was a meritocracy. John, it's a meritocracy. The wealthiest people in the society are the most useful and who are the best at being in the society. Yeah, okay, bud. Yeah, okay. Bernie's biggest crime was bringing people together around common issues. That's why he was stopped. Yep. I think you're right about that. And there is, like, something... Here's where things get kind of weird and kind of interesting, right? Because we do tend to think about politicians and business people as these, like, conniving, like, yes, and then we'll do this, and then that will cause all of these kinds of problems. When really I think that they're just sort of casually disinterested in helping people, while simultaneously, like, I think that Bernie Sanders likely has a good deal of sympathy within the Democratic Party. I think that the Democrats, by and large, are probably quite sympathetic to Bernie Sanders' position of Medicare for all, right? And I would include people like Joe Biden in that they're likely quite sympathetic to him. It's just that they understand who pays their bills, right? And they understand that the people who are paying their bills are saying no to it. And there is no popular movement. That it would be much more difficult for these politicians to say no if there was 100,000 people surrounding the White House, right? That's exactly what was happening throughout the 60s and 70s. Richard Nixon passed a ton of liberal reform. Psychopath fucking Richard Nixon, who said he wanted to nuke Cambodia, right? Like, who literally bombed Cambodia until he ran out of bombs and ran out of targets. Like, like literally just like a nightmare sociopath, passes some of the most progressive legislation in American history. What, you think he was doing that because out of the goodness of his heart? No, he was doing that because the fucking White House was surrounded, right? We have him on tape. We literally have him saying to people, what if they just come in here? What happens if they just come in here? Well, what do you fucking think happens, Richard? So he passes a bunch of legislation, right? Because he was scared. Because he was scared, and that's where you need to put politicians. That's where politicians need to be. They need to be scared. Which is why, please come to my protest, September 18th, 2 p.m., Yonge and Dundas Square. I'm trying to find people who are willing to come out and surround these places. Because fuck all this, I think is the word that I would use. Fuck all this. Right? Fuck all this. Thanks, bud. Thanks, bud. I've been working on it my whole life. Oh, and you can do, because you can do Bernie too, right? You can do Bernie. Bernie is Richard Nixon, just with less gravel, right? You talk like this, but then you talk like this, and you're Nixon. I love trying to impersonate people. It's my favorite thing to do. And you know what's weird is that I can't get Joe Biden. I can't get Joe Biden because I think it's because Joe Biden is he's so vanilla. Like he's so distilled. He has no personality at all. Right? So like you just kind of end up having to be an old man. You just kind of have to be you, but just old. So that you're like, come on, man. You know, come on. America is the greatest country in the world. And we here in America believe that people should have rights and freedoms to be as American as you can be. And anybody who says anything else is just full of malarkey. Come on, man. That's the best I think I can do with Joe Biden. Donald Trump was great for impressionists, dude. Donald Trump was great for impressionists. This guy, this is the greatest. We just need we're the greatest country in the world. Everything's great. The lips. But no one could do it better than Alec Baldwin. Like Alec Baldwin nailed the shit out of it. That's why nobody else tried, right? Like Alec Baldwin came out and did it, and people were like, Alec Baldwin is doing a spot on Trump impression. Fuck that. We're done. We don't even need to try. They tried to get Jim Carrey to be their Biden on SNL, but it's not a very good Biden. Like he's not very good at it. Like it wasn't the same, you know? And also I feel like the Biden administration has done a really good job of being boring, right? Like I think that's the big claim to fame for the Biden administration is that they've done an extremely good job at being kind of boring and not watchable, you know? And this is coming off as stability, right? That Donald Trump was so unstable and so destabilizing and so insane and so ridiculous that just somebody comes into the White House and is just kind of, you know, well, welcome back to America, and, you know, America, we're back. We got the unity, and we're gonna be back here in America, and Biden is acting the same as Trump in regards to his actions, right? Like, he still bombs Syria, he's bombing Somalia, right? The Afghanistan withdrawal was literally just a continuation of the withdrawal that Trump had already done, that had already negotiated. Like, the continuity between the Trump administration and the Biden administration is pretty tight. Like, there isn't much difference in regards to their action. It's just that Biden, when he comes out and talks to the press, he's like, oh, come on, man. You know, we here in America, we're trying our best, and we are going to move forward with integrity. You know, instead of being like, no, that's fake news. You're stupid. You look really stupid today. You know, the immigrant concentration camps are even worse now. Of course they are. Like, of course they are. It's just that's pretty common actually, Bubble Gumpy. Like the it's common that some of the worst actions happen under Democrats because the American populace have it in their heads that Democrats are civilized and Republicans are barbarians, right? When not the inverse is true, like the inverse is not true, but like, but because Americans believe that Democrats are more civilized because they present as more civilized, right? Like Barack Obama presented as a civilizing force, right? Just he was the way he spoke, the speeches that he wrote himself, right? He was a very intelligent man, but Barack Obama took America from 2 wars to 7. The drone campaigns happened under Obama, right? Like, by any measure you want to measure, the Obama administration was a far more bloodthirsty administration than the Bush administration by huge measures, right? What Obama is responsible for in Libya makes him a far more evil war criminal than the Bush administration in huge amounts. In huge amounts. Like, when Bush goes into Iraq, right, he fundamentally deposes a leader that the United States had imposed in the first place, right? His own father had put Saddam Hussein in power. That, like, the relationships and the situation in Iraq were so tied into Americanism in the first place that the invasion of Iraq was just sort of a logical conclusion, right? That it had less to do with going in and like upsetting some kind of anti-American force, and more like going in and just tying up a loose end and like getting the oil, and who gives a fuck about these people who are already fucked over for generations already. And like kind of the same story in Afghanistan. Like, Afghanistan's already a war-torn country, right? It's already destroyed. Like the government that's in place, the Taliban, were literally put in by the Americans in the first place. So that's Bush, right? Those are Bush's wars. Libya was a country that was run by a socialist, by an outright socialist, Gaddafi, who overthrew the monarchy in Libya in a bloodless coup, right? Literally, the people of Libya came together and said, get rid of this monarchy, and they walked in the doors and said, you're no longer the king, and the king went, ah, well, and they moved on. The standard of living went up in Libya by huge amounts. Education rates soared. Hunger declined. By any metric you want to measure, Libya is a socialist success. Enormous gains were made by the people of Libya under Gaddafi. The Obama administration came in, Hillary Clinton as the Secretary of State, came in. They publicly executed Gaddafi with a sword up his rectum. And Libya went from being a successful... Gaddafi had eliminated homelessness. He literally said, I will not give my own father a house until every Libyan is housed. And he did. And the Americans publicly executed him, and then turned Libya into a failed state with open slave trade markets. Obama did that. That was the Obama administration. It's one of the most barbaric acts that has happened in the last 100 years to a nation. Obama did that. So Americans are gullible and easy to deceive. All you have to do is stand up in front of them and speak like a statesman. And speak slowly like you know what's going along. My fellow Americans, I'm here today to tell you that I am here to protect your future. as a fellow American and to unify the states together in our eternal vision towards freedom, justice, truth, and liberty. And as long as you say that, then you can destroy whatever fucking nation you want. Is there a similarity between cons and libs in Canada as far as policy being similar? The Conservatives and the Liberals are allies. They work together. They of course, for like simple narcissism and financial reason, they want to win, right? They want to be the ones in power. But in terms of actual policy, the Liberals and the Conservatives work together. They're allies. That the differences that they find are usually just like identity issues, right? So like the Liberals will be like, it's okay to be gay, and the Conservatives will be like, keep the gay away, right? Pray the gay away, right? Like that kind of thing. But in terms of class issues, in terms of like capitalism issues, they are the same. They're the same party. They vote along the same lines. And the goal of the Liberals and the Conservatives is to keep the populace entranced and entrenched in identity politics and identity politics issues so that they can form those camps and vote along those lines and pass the ball back and forth to one another to ensure that capital is protected. And should an actual leftist movement come up, should an actual leftist movement rise and threaten the system of capital the way that it's happening now, the job of the Liberals is to take the knee, capitulate to the Conservatives, and let the Conservatives destroy everyone. And that's likely what's going to happen. Before you sign off tonight, please, if you search Trump complains about Scooby-Doo. Oh, okay, great. I love it. Let's take a look. I love impressions, and people who are good at impressions, I really love. Trump complains about Scooby-Doo. It sounds like the U.S. with extra steps. Yeah. We are a different country. Okay.
Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo. They call him Scooby-Doo. They call show Scooby-Doo. But Scooby doesn't do anything. Scooby is not involved. Half the time, Scooby's not even involved. He's just a bystander. It's one of the worst deals we've ever had. To call a show Scooby-Doo and then not deliver on Scooby-Doo. This is not a show about a dog sniffing its ass, okay? This is your show where the mystery team are in a van and they walk around and they do, they figure out, mystery. They're solving mystery. And Scooby is not involved in any way, shape, form. Scooby, frankly, gets too much attention, money. We're giving way too much attention to Mr. Scooby. And he's not doing anything. Scooby-Doo, he doesn't do. So we call him Scooby, but he doesn't do. We call him Scooby, but he doesn't do. It's a terrible deal. The show, by the way, if we were talking about who actually was doing anything, solving mystery and helping crime, stopping the bad guys who are really not so bad. If you talk to some of these guys, they just want to remake the world into a better place if it wasn't for these meddlesome kids and their stupid work. Okay? But we're doing a show about mystery team, they're solving the mystery. They should call the show Velma. Why don't they call the show Velma? Velma's the one doing everything. Fred and Daphne, they're just over there porking in the corner. They're not doing anything. They're making out being unhelpful, okay? Fred just drives. Fred's just the driver. He doesn't drive the plot, and he doesn't drive the mystery, and he doesn't solve the mystery. He just moves the van from place to place, A to B. And it's a very unhelpful thing. We don't even need the van. The van does not play narrative. It does not have narrative role, okay? Other than we can't be doing the same crime in the same place. We need to move on to a new monster. And so from that perspective, van makes a lot of sense. But Daphne, not much to do. Daphne, very not much to do. Shaggy, oddly enough, this little stoner who's over in the corner picking his ass and rolling joints. weirdly actually ends up helping the mystery a lot more than Fred and Daphne. Okay, a lot more. And yet we call the show Scooby-Doo. We call the show Scooby-Doo, and we should be calling it Velma. We should be calling it Shaggy and Velma, with minimal help from Scooby-Doo, and we're doing a terrible job, frankly, monitoring this situation. And people say I know haunted diver, haunted scuba guy. Of course I wish him well. I wish anybody well. He glows, and he's got glowing seaweed and glowing kelp on his body. I wish a lot of people well, okay? I would wish Jabberjaw well. I wish a lot of people well. I used to live in an underwater, and I thought that, haunted scuba guy, the people in this neighborhood really like him, okay? It's the kids that come in and break everything up that are to blame. It is the meddlesome kids. The scuba guy would have been fine if it weren't for the awful kids. And don't we love that theme song? Scooby-Doo, need some help. Remember when we used to have good theme song, and now we don't even have theme song anymore. We're really not writing good pop songs for theme song anymore, and it's a shame. What an awful shame. Of course, they wanted to update Scooby-Doo. They did. They came out with an awful one. Scoob. They wanted it for theater, and they didn't have theater. Because Fauci didn't want to let any of the movies go to theater. He said everything needs to premiere on streaming service. And it's a terrible deal, because Scoob should have been a big box office smash. And instead it really wasn't. And nobody cares about the new superhero character. We don't really care about that, okay? We don't care that the monsters are real. The whole point of the show is that the guy who is to blame is actually some sort of caretaker who's tired of tomfoolery. He's tired of teenagers. He's tired of the teenagers.
That guy absolutely nails Donald Trump, dude. Like, that's Donald Trump to a T. Like,
you ever think it's a little weird just how many lies are...
Like, Alec Baldwin's Trump he captures kind of the bombastic nature of Trump. But this guy really captures when Trump is just sort of talking, right? When he's just in a room with like some reporter and he's just talking, and like the mannerisms and like all. Oh man, that guy nailed Trump, dude. That was great. Get that kid a wig. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much, Dan Boxes, for recommending that one. That was fun. What a great way to close out the night. I hope that you guys are doing really well out there, man. It is getting chaotic. It's getting chaotic. We have seen big protests because of the anti-mask movement. There is a bubbling undercurrent of anger that exists within the populace right now. Big time. And not all of it, of course, is like the political class's fault. It's a very frustrating situation that we're in, certainly. And people are taking their anger out in ways that they can. But the protests that have gone on against the liberals during this period of time does speak to this. It does speak to this resentment, this anger that exists in the populace. And my hope is that we can convince these people who want to double into that anger, who want to turn that anger into hatred, who want to vote conservative, right? Who want to galvanize that anger and turn that anger into a weapon that they can use as a cudgel against itself. My hope is that anger will turn itself, that people will turn away from that anger, that they will have expressed their anger, that they will have expressed their feelings of frustration, and then allow not even reason, but just simple compassion and simple empathy to decloud their senses and finally come back to love. Because that's what it's all about, baby. It's all about love. Now, I would love to live in a country that was being ruled by love. That's the country I want to live in. And I hope you do too. I appreciate you too, love. Thanks for being here. I hope you have a good night. Always remember, guys, you are, each and every one of you, you are a divine being standing in divine energy. These guys are spending billions of dollars to keep you away from that. Good luck. We're going to need it.